Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and welcome to another exciting round of and new MMA show. I'm your host, Michael Hansen, and I am joined this week, as I always am, by my two compadres, both of whom, dare I say, bring MMA punditry to new heights. Introducing to you first, from New York, Mark Priaulx. What's up, buddy?
What's up, boys? If you're listening to this, hopefully we don't have any upload issues and we get this thing out to you a day earlier than usual, because we are recording it a day earlier than usual because we are starting to have to cater to Mike Hansen's busy ring announcing schedule, because he is becoming such a big deal and being in such high demand at all these events all over the country. Is this one Vegas?
It's in Vegas.
Yeah, it is. That's what I thought. I thought this was that one. Yeah. The man is going to be, if you're in Vegas and you pass a billboard, his face is going to be on all the billboards. He's the marquee in Vegas this week.
That's right, man. That's right.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. It dropped onto my lap. I'll talk about it in a bit. But let's first introduce, from Florida, the Sunshine State, New York Part 2, Omar Artola. What's up, buddy?
What's up, bud? I definitely would not call Florida New York Part 2.
No?
Very different vibe down here. No.
There's so many New Yorkers in
crazy
Florida.
People. Yes, there are
like
crazy
that.
people down here for sure, but it's a much different vibe down here. Much different.
For sure.
Anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, I got some new running sneakers. So I started running because I'm trying to train for this 5K. I feel like I've mentioned this before. But my fucking shins and the bottom of my feet, feel like they're going to snap off by the time I'm, done running.
Dude, get inserts. Insoles.
Yeah.
I got Hoka's. I don't know if you know what those are.
I do.
Yeah, I've heard of this brand.
Why do they already
I was
have?
running in goddamn Nike sneakers. I didn't realize that these were. I basically might as well have been running fucking barefoot, apparently. But I got these Hoka's. My wife has had hers for a little bit now, and I got some for myself. Bro, my legs didn't hurt at all. The difference that those sneakers made in me running was stupid. It was astronomically different.
I had a very similar experience lately. So I play basketball once a week, and for the past, I don't know what, at least a few years, if not more, after I play basketball, I feel like I am a cripple. I feel it in my legs, my knees, my ankles, my back, everywhere, and I'm like, oh, I'm just getting old, whatever. So I saw some ad for, I think it's VK Try, it might be, VKTRY, insoles, and they everything about it, I was like, wow, this seems like they're really amazing, and they were only $100. I was like, fuck it, let me try these things. I literally feel like I am 20 years old. I finished playing, and I'm like, well, that was fun. I feel perfectly the same as I did when I started playing. It's magic. I can't believe that it's a real thing. And that I went all these years without knowing how fucking good insoles are. I've never used them for my life until now.
Yeah, I actually was looking at insoles too, actually. But I decided instead of doing the insoles to just spend the money on these sneakers. And they were totally worth the money. They're expensive as fuck. I'm paying them in they're almost, they're $170 or something like that. But I split them up into installments, and I've never paid that much for sneakers. I've never had a pair of Jordans or anything wild.
You and me are not the same.
No. I go to Sports Authority. I get me my $35 sneakers, and I'm good to go. I'm out the door. I don't require much. I was never that kid.
I have enough room in my closet.
Dude, Mark, how many pairs of sneakers do you own? You're that kind of guy.
Less now. Probably 30 now, but it used to be more.
Less 30.
Wow,
no big
30.
deal.
Maybe not.
NBD.
It might not even be 30. It might be closer to 20 now.
27.
I really have
26.
Oh my god.
I really have weeded a lot.
Dog, I have 3 sneakers.
He had 3.
And
he has
to
one
be honest,
pair and just one other sneaker.
And one of these sneakers I've been wearing for years, and I notice now on the bottom, they look like bald tires. Like they're completely, there's no fucking tread on there at all. It's completely bald. But I love those sneakers. They're so comfortable.
Just get a new pair, dude.
I should just get a new pair of the exact same sneakers.
Yeah.
I should do that.
Yeah.
Dude, I've done that plenty of times.
Yeah.
I'm a lover of clothing, but I'm also can be a bit cheap, and I do not like to spend money on shoes. I do not like to spend money on shoes.
You don't like to spend money, full stop, Mike. Full stop. We don't even want to get into the TV game on here. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it.
Oh, that I don't have a TV?
At all.
I don't have a TV. Let
It's
me
the
know in the
wildest
comments.
thing.
Let me know in the comments if anybody out there also doesn't have a TV because they don't need one.
Situation. I'm adding a second TV this weekend. I have a guy coming to install it.
Dog, I
It'll
still have...
be on the back of the wall that the other TV is on. So you're in this room for one and this room for the other.
The wife and I were looking at a brand new upgrade of the same TV that we have downstairs. That frame, the Samsung frame.
That's what we just
This-
got, the frame. Yep.
Very nice. What size?
55 or 65? I'm forgetting
Okay.
which one now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a big wall, so I went wild on mine. But they're
Wow, how big
doing...
is
I had I think I have a 75 is what I have.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, that would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I'm trying
That
to
would be really cool.
think.
But
Dude,
they're
I
doing...
just entertain
They just
myself in other
released
ways.
they released a Disney version of the frame for their 100th anniversary, and it comes preloaded with over 100 paintings, basically Disney exclusive
wow.
shit.
That's your
And
shit.
so
That's
and
made-
so
it's
you
made
know
for
I
you.
was looking. You know I was looking. It's rough though. They don't even have my size. I'd have to get a size down at this point. The 75s are all sold out. and I'm
Speaking of
not
spending
doing that.
money, the fucking frames are so expensive. We bought it on, what was it, a Labor Day sale or some shit? I don't know. It was a good sale, so we got
It's
it.
worth it though, dude. It's a beautiful
wait a second.
TV.
Catch me up here. The frame is the model, and it's like this TV that can be in disguise as a painting.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
But
it
then
is
your
cool.
TV is always on, right? Is it gonna kill your energy bill?
I think
So-
you can just turn it off if you so choose.
Yeah, but
You can
defeats
put
the
it in
purpose.
you can put it in art mode. So for example, for me at night, my TV turns itself off because there's no light and there's no movement. So it automatically detects it and then it shuts itself off. And then in the morning when I turn the light on, it'll turn itself on. And I get some art going on there.
Yeah,
and I
like
love
when
seeing the art throughout the day.
Yeah, when you know you're leaving your house, you could turn it off. When you're going to be home, you could leave it on and see the art, whatever. Or if people are going to be over.
Yeah. And to be honest, there's also it's more than just the art. They do have something called ambient mode in there, which we're getting way off topic. But
Yeah, I
ambient
was going
mode,
to say we should get to the MMA at some point.
way off
here.
topic. But ambient mode is pretty dope though, because ambient mode will give you there are scenes in there where you can feel like you're outside. You can have little thingies going on the TV itself, interactive stuff. It's actually really cool. It's more than just the art.
Or you could just go outside. It's always good.
I mean, what's the point? Then why'd you buy the frame?
I didn't buy the frame to pretend I'm outside.
Yes, I
Certainly-
did. Fuck, I don't have to go
certainly not why.
nowhere. If I want to be outside, I'll be inside.
All right,
let's
let's talk about the theme of our show, which is MMA. So we're going to talk about all the fights from this past weekend's Noche UFC, with the main event showdown between Valentina Shevchenko and Alexa Grasso for the
Featuring
women's
Mike Bell.
flyweight title. What's that?
Featuring Mike Bell.
Featuring Mike Bell, which we will get to. We're going to throw some of these fights into our lightning round, where I challenge Mark and Omar to give me their quick lightning takes. We're going to find out who rose and who fell in Mark's rankings, which he meticulously maintains. We're going to dive head first inside the MMA sphere with Omar Artola and find out what's going on in the world of MMA outside of the cages. And then we're going to look ahead to this coming weekend's MMA action, both in Bellator and UFC. Bellator 299, Eblen versus Edwards, and UFC Fight Night, Fiziev versus Gamrot. And then if we're lucky and awake, we might end with a little bit of trivia. So before we get into any fight talk, boys, let's first address our audience. If you guys are watching this right now on YouTube, hey, thank you so much seriously, we appreciate each and every one of you guys that have been with us on this journey from the early days. This is now episode 112. It's crazy that we've been doing this for almost 2 years now.
It really is.
Insane. It still feels like we've been doing this for about 4, 5, 6 months.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, man. So if you've been watching a few of our videos and you like what you've been seeing, you appreciate our takes and our opinions and our insights, and not even that we have that many insights to offer, but just as the MMA purist fans that we are, bringing the discussion that we've been having for years onto this platform, do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up. Costs you nothing, but it helps us out so much. If you like any of our takes, let us know down in the comments, man. Hey, if you disagree with any of our takes, let us know down in the comments. We love to hear your takes and engage with this little community that we're building right here. It's awesome. As always, keep it classy. If you want audio only and you want to scratch the And New MMA show with just your headphones, we got you. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And we're on social media. You can find us on all the relevant platforms at @andnew_MMA show. All right, let's get to it. It's showtime.
He gave me just enough time to input all of the odds into my notes, so thank you for that.
Very nice. All right. As I said, we are on the heels now of this past weekend's UFC Fight Night. Grasso versus Shevchenko 2, a.k.a. Noche UFC, even though it was not in a Spanish-speaking country. It was in Las Vegas. I believe it was at T-Mobile. But it was coinciding pretty much with Mexican Independence Day. And, yeah, it was at T-Mobile. So, with the theme, it was Noche UFC, featuring a lot of Mexican and Latin American fighters. And the main event was Alexa Grasso defending her women's flyweight title against Valentina Shevchenko in their rematch. But neither one of these women are who we are putting on the marquee this week. This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Judge Mike Bell, who this past weekend, in front of 18,000 plus at the T-Mobile Arena, scored the what round was it?
Round 5.
Round 5, a 10-8 in favor of Alexa Grasso. In doing so, a single judge with one single point, meaning instead of scoring the round 10-9, he scored a 10-8 for Grasso. So a single judge with one single point literally affected the outcome of this fight, because if he scored that round simply a 10-9 for Grasso, Valentina Shevchenko is once again and new women's flyweight champion. But because Mike Bell scored that round at 10-8, this fight ended up being a draw. And that means that Grasso retains the belt in a draw. So, Mark, what are your thoughts on Mike Bell and his decision, and what did you see in that fifth round, and do you agree or disagree with the fact that it was scored 10-8?
I mean, I certainly disagree, as I hope anyone with a brain would disagree. I'll talk about the fight first, I guess, and then I'll circle my way back to this moron. I will say for Mike Bell, he's never a guy involved with these bad scorecards. So I guess first time for everything, though, because this was a bad one. Anyway, let me do the fight first. It was a fantastic fight. It gave us everything throughout those 5 rounds, and it deserved to have a winner. Both girls left it out there. There were huge momentum swings back and forth at different times. You know, Valentina comes out. She sets the tone. She wins the first. Then in the second, you have Alexa dropping her and swarming her, but Valentina finds the takedown to kind of retake the control. Then round 3, she just continues it. You get a grappling exhibition from Valentina in that round. Round 4, razor close back and forth that should have ended up deciding the fight. And then round 5, you have this scenario where it seems like the challenger is kind of running away with it and is going to be the new champion. And then, you know, another mistake from Valentina, and the champ finds a way to shift the momentum back and take that round. I mean, it had it all. It had so many swings, and every round was clear except the fourth. Valentina won 1-3. Alexa won 2-5. And the fourth was really close, and it should have decided this fight. And it could have gone either way that round. Like, I wouldn't have hated the scorecards going to Alexa. I wouldn't have hated them going to Valentina. So I guess that helps slightly, because it's not like it was 100% that Valentina was going to be champion, because that round was tough. In that round, Valentina jumps out to an early lead. Alexa responds with this flurry of knees that were all legal. So many people are saying they're illegal. They were not illegal. The rules in Vegas are that if you have a hand down, it needs to be a weight-bearing hand, and it very certainly was not weight-bearing in the slightest. So they were all legal, and then she gets this big slam. But then Valentina responds again after that, and Grasso finishes with a sub-attempt. I mean, the round's all over the place, and both girls had moments. And it was really hard to call. On MMA Decisions, you can see that 12 experts to 11 had it for Grasso. It was that tight, 12 to 11. And the public was basically even on MMA Decisions too. So it was that damn close. It should have come down to that. It should have decided the fight. You would have had either the story of, Alexa like on the verge of losing and Valentina making yet another mistake that lets Alexa keep her title. Or you have the story of Valentina adjusting to Alexa's jab and having success in the striking again, where she didn't really have it in the first fight, and showing her grappling advantage again and retaking her title. And in this instance, it would have been the latter, because, as you said, 2 of the 3 judges scored round 4 for Valentina, and she would have been champion again. But instead, we get this utter, inexplicable nonsense from Mike Bell. 10-8 in round 5 is an awful, awful, awful score. There is no defending it. As I said, it's inexplicable. The round was no more clear for Grasso than round 2 was, or than round 3 was for Shevchenko with the grappling exhibition that she had in that round. I mean, there are no grounds to score that round 10-8. Valentina was winning the round clearly for 3+ minutes prior to making the mistake. And even after she made the mistake, she was never hurt. She never ate any big shots. Yeah, there were a couple sub-attempts and some good punches, but none were close to hurting her, getting her out of there or anything. There's no justifiable way to score that round of 10-8. And yet, because MMA going to find a way to MMA, that is what we got, and we are left with this bullshit instead of celebrating what was a fantastic fight from both women.
The only round that was split on the judges' scorecards was the 4th round. Rounds 1, 2, 3, and 5, all 3 judges had the same winners of those 4 rounds.
Yeah, and they were all clear.
The only other difference is that Mike Bell scored round 5 10-8 instead of 10-9. Omar, your thoughts on the fight as a whole and on the 5th?
So before we get into the scorecards, I was actually really impressed with Alexa Grasso in this performance. I know she man. I think she still had some opportunities on the ground when it came to the control and things like that. We also have to give credit really quick to Valentina as well, who apparently fought 4 rounds with a broken hand.
That's right. I didn't even say that. Yep.
Which, if you've seen recent pictures in the last couple hours, the last few hours on this Tuesday evening, you will see how jacked that finger really is. This whole thing here is effed. Like the whole thumb/palm area, absolutely jacked. So she's apparently going to be out, by the way, for at least 3 months as far as no contact is concerned. So she's not even going to start training until probably 2024 at this point. So we should probably keep that in mind when it comes to what's next for these women. But back to the fight. I was really impressed with Alexa Grasso. Her hands I've never seen her hands look that good. And she's looked, she's always been a good fighter. She's always been a very elite fighter as far as her skill set and her IQ is concerned when it comes to the fight. But her hands were on point. She was not afraid to scrap. She was getting punches in, and I think she did a lot more damage standing up this fight than she did in the last.
She knocked her down.
But even without the knockdown, there were a lot of punches that were landing clean on Valentina's face. And we don't really see very often people being able to land things like that cleanly on Valentina. And I thought Alexa Grasso did a fantastic job. It was a rough fight. It was a tough fight. Valentina is a person who's very smart in the cage and knows how to win fights. Very close ones, but she does know how to win them. And, we were getting into moments in a lot of these rounds where, Alexa made a good accounting of herself, but it was clear who won the rounds. The fourth round, like we're talking about, was the only one that I think was split up in the air. I did have that one for Grasso. A lot of people had that one for Shevchenko as well. The fifth round is crazy. It's absolutely wild. As much as I'm glad Alexa didn't lose her belt, that card is crazy. And it's hard to imagine that the reason that was a 10-8 round wasn't because the dude felt a certain way about how his card already was and decided to just make it so that, Alexa didn't lose her belt, right? Maybe he felt by the end of that fight that Alexa had actually won that fight, or at the very minimum didn't lose that fight, and decided that because his scorecard would have been one that didn't help her in that moment or didn't reflect how he felt about the fight, he made a decision to do something that did. We've heard this be, I feel like, a kind of like one of those urban legends, right? Like we've heard of this kind of behavior with judges in the past. I don't think I've ever seen it so goddamn blatant before, or at least to the point where it's the first thought that came into my mind when that scorecard went off was like, oh, he must have thought he fucked up and didn't want Alexa Grasso to lose, so he must have put just a random score on there that would mess it all up. And I think that, the 10-8 round, I think in his mind, if it was Shevchenko, he basically didn't want anything to do with making the decision on what happened in that fight. How
can that be, though? Like, that's literally his job, is just to score the fight.
I don't disagree. And to be fair, there's a little bit of tinfoil hat here going on, right? Like, we don't really fucking know. But the feeling of it, the way that that conclusion came about, the fact that nobody agrees, like there is nobody that agrees with this 10-8 round. It's difficult to think then if it's not based on the merit of the fight and what happened, then what is another explanation for why he was giving her a 10-8 round? That's the first one that comes to my mind, and it seems like I wasn't the only one who came to that conclusion.
And dude, guys, I am somebody who is an enthusiastic supporter of the loosening up of the 10-8 and the more using it a little bit more liberally than it used to be. But then we run into this kind of situation where it's just kind of like, that was not a 10-8 round. I mean, really, the takedown and ground control by Grasso, we're really talking about two submission attempts. She attempted a guillotine, and then she attempted a rear naked choke, or vice versa, or in reverse order, right?
It was a rear naked. And
what
then
was first?
Was the guillotine the next one? Was it a guillotine? It was rear naked first.
Okay. Then it was a guillotine.
What was late? Was it a guillotine? I guess. I can't remember now.
Because she got out of it and she scrambled and she wound up in a guillotine attempt.
Yeah, but it was a couple sub attempts. It was some solid, punches, like rain down style punches, but none of them were like big, like, oh, big one. None of them were that.
And to be fair,
she was clearly down in the round after 3.5 minutes, like clearly down. There was no way that round wasn't being scored for Valentina.
Right.
And I think the other thing is Valentina kind of had a point where she was talking about how 10-8 rounds are basically like completely destroying the fighter. And I think we've gotten past that a little bit. I don't think that I completely agree with her take. I think that was the former use of the 10-8 round was basically near-death experience in the cage.
Correct.
But at the same time, even with that tidbit in mind and not necessarily agreeing with Valentina's take, I still don't think that was a 10-8 round. I don't even think it was close to a 10-8 round.
No, I agree.
Clear.
When I heard the 47-47, my mind shot back thinking, okay, wait, what other rounds did I score for Grasso? And I was like 2 and 4. Okay, which of those could have been the 10-8? Like I didn't even consider that it was round 5 that was the 10-8. And then because I couldn't fully remember those other rounds. And then once I thought them through, I was like, wait a second, like none of these could have been 10-8. Like the fact of it being round 5 didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
I even went to round 2. I was like, all right, she had the knockdown in round 2. Did he give her a 10-8 because of a knockdown? Like, yeah, it made no sense.
This result makes me think of that idea that I've heard a few people mention before of, well, two things. A, for live scoring, even though this is at the 5th round, so it wouldn't matter.
Solved it, yeah.
And B, interviewing the judges after the fight if it's some
100%.
crazy shit like this of like Mike Bell. What'd you see in that 5th round that made you think it was a 10-8? Microphone in his face. I don't. It wouldn't solve anything.
He would not be able to offer an explanation. Like,
Have you heard about Ariel having been trying to do that for the longest time now? He's contacted Nevada Athletic State Commission. He's contacted other commissions. I think California was the other one that he also contacted about reaching out to judges to have them explain some of these scorecards or whatever, like when it happens. And he makes the point of like, I can talk to everybody. I can talk to Dana White, or I guess he probably specifically can't talk to Dana White, but reporters can talk to Dana White and they can like ask everybody involved in the process and things like that. And they can talk to anybody, but for whatever reason, the guys that are actually making the decisions on who wins and loses in these fights are all of a sudden like cast into the shadows, and no one can talk to them about it or ask their opinion. Yeah. And I don't think it should be that way. And I think
what is wrong with that?
Well, so the only reason that Ariel has said that he has been given by people, I think specifically in Nevada, it sounds like California was a little bit more like, you do what you want. You can ask them what they want. I don't know if they're going to tell you anything, but I'm not going to stop you. Nevada Athletic Commission put the kibosh on it before it even got to whether the judges wanted to talk or not. They were like, no, we're not going to do that, and it's not something we plan on doing right now. And they didn't really give an explanation as to why, other than we want to protect them. They don't make a lot of money doing what they do. It was an excuse or an answer that didn't make any sense to me. It just sounded like random facts that he was throwing out. So
protect them. They have all the power. They are deciding who gets paid, who is champion. They're deciding everything. You want to protect them? Absolutely not. Like, when you have that kind of power, you have to explain yourself.
Amen. Totally. They're the state. Like, there's no one above them.
This is one of the most I would ever have loved to hear, which is funny because if he just scored the 4th for Grasso and she won anyway, I wouldn't have even complained.
Right.
But he didn't.
It would have been like, that was a weird score for the 5th round, but Grasso won.
Yeah. It's like she would have won either way. All right. I mean, but still, like, I just, there is nothing he could say. Like, there's not even a theory I could come up with that he could spit out of his mouth to explain why he viewed that as a 10-8.
Agree.
And it's a shame one that's legit anyway. I'm sure he's got a reason.
Maybe he could have.
Not one that's legit.
I can imagine that he could say something about that he thought those submission attempts were very close, and that to him was dominance. And
use your eyes then. Like, I think Omar might have a point that like that fight ended and like pride style. He was like, man, kind of feel like Alexa won that fight overall. Maybe I'll just give her a 10-8 so she keeps her belt.
But of course, the 3 judges don't see each other's scores, so the other 2 guys could have scored it for Shevchenko.
Oh, for sure.
He could have, but then it wouldn't have been his decision, is what I'm saying. Like, the fact that he scored it a draw means that he put it on the other 2 judges to figure it out for them themselves. Because I'm pretty sure he knew that they weren't going to score a draw.
Would keep the belt.
So you're saying that the judging equivalent of like passing the buck?
Yeah.
Yeah, and because it now only
maybe.
If it's a legit draw, it's a legit draw. But do you feel like that was a legit draw by the end of the 5th round from a scoring perspective, not from a pride perspective, but from a legit round-for-round scoring perspective? I don't think anybody can make the argument that was a draw on points. You can't.
If it was a pride-style fight and they were like, you know what, that fight was super close, I'm going to score that fight overall as a draw, I would be like kind of okay with that. But in the must system, the 10-point must system, you got to score by round. And that 5th round was not a 10-8.
You know what's funny?
Correct.
You could have scored round 5 10-9 for Grasso and round 4 10-10. But no one ever scores 10-10s. But round 4 was close that it could have been a draw that way.
Round 4 was super close.
Which would have been way more of a respectable draw than this way.
Yes. No one will ever score a fight 10-10.
No one uses
and I'll tell you why. If you watch the Rose and Carlos Esparza fight, if you didn't score that fight, that first round, or probably even more than that first round, a 10-10, you're never scoring another fight 10-10 for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
that was the standard, and no one did it. Not one.
Yep.
It's to echo a point Omar made, it's a damn shame because this was a great fight, man. It was a great championship fight between two of the best fighters in the world. You know?
Oh yeah. oh yeah.
Connection issues over here. You guys still hear me fine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Came off the stand.
let's talk about where these ladies go from here. Run it back. A lot of people were saying, does it make sense? Yes? No? Mark, what do you think?
Run it back. I don't care. I don't care that it's going to hold up the division. Yes, it sucks, but there's no other choice here. And I get it. There's this curveball now of Valentina being hurt. It does seem like she could be back to training in like maybe not even 3 months. So, I don't know how soon Grasso's looking to get back in there. If it is going to fuck things up because Valentina's hurt, then maybe you don't have a choice. But if it works out where you can schedule this thing, you got to do it. And it does help that you have two contenders waiting in Erin Blanchfield and Manon Fior, because now they can just fight each other. It's not like you're leaving one person out in the cold. Like if it's me, I put all four of them on the same card. Put
Hell yeah.
Blanchfield and Fior on the same card. Now you have a backup built in if Shevchenko drops out or Grasso drops out for any reason, and you straighten out the whole division on the same night.
Omar, what do you think?
So I'm also kind of on the rematch train. I just don't know how that's going to look from a timing perspective just because of Valentina's injury. I don't know how much of it is up to Grasso, to be honest. I think she does have a pretty good following when it comes to the Latin American crowd, especially the Mexican crowd. And Valentina, to be honest, has never been a particularly big sell, which is why a lot of her fights have either been fight nights or they've been, co-headlining a really big event or something like that. But she's never, to my understanding, I don't think she's ever carried a pay-per-view on her back before. And I don't think she brings in that kind of spark, I guess. So from a business perspective, I don't know really what that looks like. Maybe they're going to want to throw Grasso in there with somebody else that makes sense. I think, Mark, you were saying were you trying to put Erin Blanchfield and Fior together and see what happens?
Yeah, I said I'd put all four of them on the same card. That way they're on the card already if Grasso or Shevchenko fell off, so one of them would be able to step in. But yeah, I'd book both fights on the same card.
So just considering the time frame, let's say we don't put Valentina. Let's say Valentina's out. I would say minimum spring of 2024, right? Just considering the fact that she has to heal. She has to get surgery. I don't know if I mentioned that. So she does have to get surgery on her hand. That was confirmed.
Do you listen when I speak?
Oh, I didn't hear what you said. My bad. So,
Just say no.
Yeah, I didn't hear. I wasn't listening.
I talk about the surgery, the recovery timeline.
Yeah. So basically what I'm getting at is, instead of putting all four of them, I would imagine that you should probably, in my opinion, I would just put Fior and Blanchfield first and sooner. That way we have an actual number one contender.
How soon could they fight, though? Like,
they didn't really take a lot of damage in their last, I would imagine so. Maybe even January, though.
But then when's a title fight happening?
I would do it at the beginning of the spring. And if Valentina's ready, then give her the rematch. If she's not ready, then have Alexa fight the next person.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Because I was going to say, wouldn't Valentina be ready by then? But you're just saying sort out the other one first in case. Yeah, all right. That's right. Fair. I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that.
We went in a roundabout way there, but we got there.
Yeah.
We got there.
Yes, I get that.
Okay. What else is there to discuss about this fight? It sucks when either a judge or a ref kind of steals the spotlight. I don't think Mike Bell was trying to steal the spotlight. To your point, Omar, it's like he was trying to pass the buck and he didn't want it to be his thing, but it was. Like I said at the beginning of this, literally 1 point determined the outcome of this fight, man, and that sucks. It just does, because it's so crazy that on the one hand, if I didn't see the fight and I was like, guys, I'm busy, I can't watch the fights, but just tell me the results and give me the gist of the fight. And if you told me like it was a great fight, it was back and forth, Shevchenko got dropped in the 5th round, she got put in a couple of what looked like tight submissions, but overall, like, she won her rounds as well. It was a great back and forth fight, ended in a draw. I'd be like, oh my God, that's so crazy. So I'm not super upset that it ended in a draw. I am super upset that was determined through this avenue.
I agree.
Right. Yep. I agree as well.
Yeah.
Because it was a great fucking fight, man. I love these two
It
fighters
was.
so much, dude. So much. I was so impressed by Grasso, dude. You're right. I mean, I feel like she's improved. And then she clearly came into this fight with so much more, even more confidence, I feel. Her stand-up looked incredible. And the last time somebody stood toe-to-toe with Shevchenko, I think, was Nunes. If I'm not mistaken. Everybody else, Shevchenko just gets the better of.
I thought Shevchenko had so much more success in the striking in this fight than in the first fight.
Really?
Yeah. I thought Grasso handled the striking in the first fight, and that Shevchenko had to resort to the grappling. Whereas here I felt like Shevchenko was doing fine everywhere.
Funny. I guess I have to go back and rewatch that first fight.
Maybe I think there was a little bit more stand-up in this fight from Shevchenko that I thought Alexa Grasso looked great in the hands. I actually thought she was getting the better of her in a lot of the exchanges, but I think there was more stand-up time in this fight than I think the ground fight. I also, did you see a spinning back kick in that fight? Because I don't think I did.
Why? Who got a spinning back kick?
I'm talking about Valentina, how she does her spinning back body kick.
Yeah, no, she did not. She stayed.
She didn't,
far
right?
away from it. Yes, 100%.
And so that's the thing that I was talking about last week was kind of having to adapt to it, right? But she's changing up. She's forcing her. Alexa Grasso is forcing Shevchenko to change her tools. Shevchenko has thrown that spinning back kick to the body in every fight that girl has been in that I can remember, and this is the first time I have never seen her throw that kick. And it goes to show you that she knows Alexa Grasso is not the one to fuck with. And it was a great fight. I loved every minute of it.
It's just crazy. See, we're not talking about some of the fight stuff because we're still focused on the scorecard. But how crazy is it that last fight she made this mistake and got her back taken and choked out? And this fight, when she was on her way to winning round 5 in the title, she made another mistake and got her back taken. Didn't get choked out here, but like almost the same shit in a different way. But like...
Yeah,
and that's
right.
the danger of that head and arm throw. And you always see it in women's MMA. They love the head and arm throw, but that's the risk of it. Yeah. It can go south.
Dude, that happened in that 5th round. You're right. Like, she went for the head and arm, and she got taken down and all right into a submission, basically. And I was like, God, does Alexa Grasso just have Shevchenko's number, man?
Yep. Shevchenko was definitely salty at the end of that fight. I don't think we need to blame Mexican Independence Day for...
She wasn't blaming the holiday. She was blaming like the hometown advantage, basically. Home court advantage.
The vibe.
But she was, it was the day and the night and the vibe and Mexican UFC basically. And she was like, I wasn't feeling that. And I was like, I don't know if it's all that. It was one douchebag that just like had the scorecards all fucked up. Like it wasn't all that.
It's as though she was, it was like this was an away game for her, is almost the sense that she had, and the refs were like skewed?
Yeah.
Slanted?
Swayed?
But you're right, dude. That was some Himalayan sea salt right there in that interview. She came right out. She said the quiet part out loud. Okay, in the interest of time, let us move on to the co-main event of Noche UFC. This past weekend at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. In the welterweight division, a bout of consequence, and Della Maddalena defeated Kevin Holland by a split decision. The scores read 29-28, two 29-28s for Della Maddalena, and 129-28 for Kevin Trailblazer Holland. Omar, let's start with you this time. What were your thoughts on this fight with Della Maddalena locking horns with Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland seemingly bringing in that jovialness into the cage that we are kind of used to with him. He came up short this time. What are your thoughts?
So this fight basically went exactly the way I thought it was going to go. This was a very tough fight, a very difficult fight for both guys to find success in. I did think Jack Della Maddalena found more success in that fight at the very minimum with the bigger shots. I think he found his right hand quite a few times when he was stepping in and was able to hit Kevin Holland clean on the chin. But it was a tough fight, man. It was definitely a tough fight, and I think it was exactly the type of test that both of them needed. I know Kevin Holland was disappointed in the decision. I don't necessarily disagree with the decision. The problem is the second round was a pain in the ass. It was it was a toss-up fight when it came down to that second round. I did have Jack winning, but I mean, you could tell me that Kevin Holland won that second round, and I wouldn't necessarily have to have much to argue in that sense. It's just, like I said, I thought Jack did more damage overall. I thought he had cleaner shots and bigger shots in there, and for me, that was the deciding factor.
Mark?
That's funny. I felt like the second round was the clearest round of the whole fight for Kevin Holland. I was hung up on the first round. Interesting, but similar vibes though overall, despite the round differences. This was a really close fight. I thought it was kind of a disappointing fight. Not that there wasn't talent on display, because there was, but I think going in there was definitely a higher expectation of violence than what we ended up getting with what these two guys are capable of. They did a little bit of a dance, you know. And I think it's really because they both kind of nullified each other in different ways, which is what made it such a close fight. Like, Jack didn't want to fully commit to his normal, like, walk him down style as dramatically as he usually does on Holland, because Holland is so long and he was being so active. He was throwing a million strikes. And then on the flip side, Holland, he fought a bit of a tentative fight because of the power that was coming back at him. Like, he looked like he didn't really want to fully commit to big strikes. You know, he was flicking a lot of them. He was looking to stay safe and kind of try to stay on the outside and score without putting his head in range of the nukes that we know JDM has. So I think those two things kind of combined to give us a fight where neither guy was able to, like, clearly pull away. Personally, yeah, as I said, I thought Holland clearly won the second round. I think Jack won the third round. For me, it was the first round that was up in the air. I couldn't decide who won it live. I watched it twice more. Once I edged it to Holland. The next time I edged it to Jack by, like, this much. So it's really that close for me. Split had to go somebody's way. On this night, it went Jack's, which is fine with me. As I said, I thought Holland fought a little too tentative. He could have gone more, and maybe it would have got him hurt. You know, who knows? But I think he could have pushed it a little more and maybe not been as upset as he is.
So I have two thoughts. Number one is that I'm a huge Kevin Holland fan. I think he is a bright spot in the UFC. He's a bright spot in the sport overall. He has a big personality, and he has the talent to match. I'm always left, not always, because sometimes he wins in spectacular fashion. But in cases like this, I'm left a little, I don't want to say disappointed, because I don't think I'm in the place to be disappointed, because I'm not like a fighter or a coach, but I just mean, like, I'm like a little let down. I'm like, I want a little more nasty from Kevin Holland in the fight.
Yeah, that's what he needed.
This like jovial, fun thing that he does is fun, because it's like a completely different flavor than what we usually get as MMA fans watching two people fight. He's like so comfortable in there. He's like chit-chat, like literally chit-chatting.
Did you hear what Jack said he was saying?
No.
Well, yeah, what did he say?
He said that he was telling him how much fun he was having in the fight, and that they should definitely train together after the fight.
That sounds about right.
That's such a strange thing. And basically that's what Jack said. He was like, yeah, like it was weird. It kind of made me feel weird about, like, continuing to fight him because he was so nice. It's
like, do you think it's like a psychological trick that he's using, or he's just...
I don't know, man.
I think that's him, dude. That seems like a real personality thing. Like, I think that's just him.
Yeah, I think he's just Kevin Holland. But I agree, it's so frustrating because, like, again, if he was a little more aggressive, maybe he does get knocked out. Who knows how it goes?
Sure.
But also, if he was a little more aggressive, maybe he wins that fight, and that's a big fucking win. And he would have been in line for like a top 5 welterweight maybe off of that win. Like that would have he would have been in a big spot. So I get it. It is kind of it's a little hard to be a Kevin Holland fan at times. You know, we saw it with Wonder Boy. Like
I was just gonna say that. Think of our frustration against Wonder Boy. He like refused to grapple the greatest kickboxer that the UFC has like ever seen.
Yep. Yep.
And he has such great attributes for welterweight. Like, just use him. Like, just fucking turn it up, man.
Yeah.
I only say this out of frustration because I love Kevin Holland, and I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how in MMA sometimes we get these fights where it's almost like they didn't happen. Like, I feel like Jack is looks no different than he did prior to that fight, and
Right.
Holland maybe looks like slightly different, but like I feel like Jack won and like didn't really get anything from winning.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a great fight, though.
Because if Kevin Holland had engaged more, but he did.
He threw a lot. He threw a ton of strikes, but like so many of them were like flicky little. He just, as I said, I guess he didn't want to get in phone booth range and risk it, but yeah, it cost him.
I'm reminded a little bit. It's a similar feeling that I have, I think, to sometimes watching the Diaz brothers fights, in that like it's just a little too much taunting guys and not enough engaging, and it's like it's almost in fights that they have lost on the scorecards, it almost was like they're taking a moral victory home with them. Like, oh, I clowned on this guy and I pointed and laughed at him, or I slapped him a couple times. But like against Carlos Condon, against GSP, or against Anderson, like Nick Diaz, like literally laid down in on the mat. It's like too much, man. Too much taunting. It's frustrating because he's so effing talented.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm gonna run into him one day. He's gonna smack me. So, let's talk about the winner here, Mr. Jack Della Maddalena. He does get the win. It goes in the books for him as a victory. So, Omar, looking out at the landscape of the welterweight division, who do you see as could be a good next opponent for JDM?
Yeah, so Jack right now is number 12 in the division. He moved up a couple spots from last week. It's hard not to say that this man doesn't deserve like increase in talent, right? Like I think we just need to keep testing Jack and keep moving him up the rankings until we figure out what his ceiling is, if at all, because he looks great. Ian Gary Machado is right on, they're pretty much neck and neck when it comes to their rankings and their momentum in the division. I'm not super keen on them fighting at this particular minute, but I wouldn't be surprised if somehow that went in that direction. But if I had to give something to Jack, let me just look up real quick and just make sure this Chooch doesn't have a fight. And if he does, maybe it'll be the winner or the loser. So I think Luque would be an interesting fight for Jack Della Maddalena. I'd be down for that.
Mark?
Yeah. To me, there's one guy that very clearly makes the most sense, and that is Vicente Luque. Jack has won his last two fights, but he hasn't really set the world on fire in either of them. I don't think he should necessarily be fighting like the true tippity top just yet, and I think Luque is that perfect interim level type of fight. He's going to bring it. He's well rounded, just like JDM. He's a knockout threat, just like JDM. That's where I go. I think it's a great litmus test of how good Jack is.
Huge litmus test, man, because Luque is a legit talent, man. He's a legit top 10 talent, and that fight would just be fireworks, man. Like, don't blink. Probably somebody's going to go to sleep in that fight. Okay. What about Kevin Holland? I hope is staying at welterweight. What do you think, Mark?
I hope so, too. He's throwing out Magny. I feel like people are just kind of accepting his call out and saying he should fight Magny. I don't love that. I think he's kind of past Magny, at least for this moment. Not saying they could end up, if he loses again, Magny wins again. But Magny looked really bad against Ian Gary. He got worked. And Kevin Holland had looked very good coming into this fight. He barely lost this fight. I'd prefer to see maybe like a Sean Brady. I know Magny's still like ranked fairly high, but I just feel like he's on the way down a bit, and I'd rather someone who's a little bit more of a contender. So I'm going to say Sean Brady and let him or Holland kind of start a new run.
For clarity, Kevin Holland is ranked number 13 right now in the official UFC rankings, and Neil Magny's ranked 14. So from a ranking perspective, I don't know how much sense that really makes for Kevin Holland at this point. Like you said, that the loss wasn't like a Neil Magny loss, where I don't think he deserves to be fighting somebody above him. I think he deserves to be fighting somebody below. So for Kevin Holland, I do think somebody just slightly above might make sense. Sean Brady's high, but I feel like he's also been out for quite some time. That I think he probably needs to defend that spot.
Okay, let's move on because it's already 11 o'clock. We have quite a bit more show ahead of us. Yes. All right. In the women's strawweight division. Oh, yeah, we're skipping down to the feature bout on the prelims. Lupita Godinez defeats Elise Reed by submission via rear naked choke in the second round. Mark, go first. You guys give us your take.
Lupita Godinez came in there to scrap. Now, it may have had something to do with the opponent and the advantages that she believed she had. I did say I expected Lupita to be able to bully Reed in there. But, man, you still want to say you'd love to see Lupita fight like that in every fight. And I think she can. You know, sometimes, I was saying this last week, sometimes she gets almost like too set in like, I'm going to strike this fight, or too set in I'm going to wrestle this fight. And this was not that. This was a perfect blend, constant pressure, trying to press her advantages in any way she could. And it ended up probably being the best performance that we've seen from her thus far. And she dominated Elise Reed. I mean, she dropped her in the first, bad with a left. She picked her up. She threw her around the cage. She almost caught her in an arm bar. And then Reed's reward for surviving that was just getting battered some more in the second round. You know, ate another barrage of strikes, got slammed again, and then ultimately choked out. So, yeah, dominant statement performance from Lupita Godinez.
Omar, what do you think?
It's the best Lupita Godinez I've ever seen by a mile.
Yeah, man.
I'm pretty sure she either like rock bottomed Elise Reed or like did a DC slam on her or something wild. Like she picked that girl all the way up in the air and then slammed her on her ass. Like that was I don't even know Lupita was that strong, dog. Like that is crazy. Her striking was super, super crisp. I don't remember her hands being that crisp. I definitely think there's something. It's apparently her and Alexa Grasso are like girls. So maybe they're training together now, and maybe that's where, you know, whatever's going on in that camp, maybe that's where her hands are getting sharper, because the difference in the way that her hands were letting loose this past weekend was night and day difference as far as I'm concerned in her last fight. The blend between the striking and the wrestling was great. But, man, that striking was on point. She was lighting her up, man. It was a beautiful performance from Lupi. And like I said, it's hard for me to want to pick against her at all going forward, because that performance was absolutely the best thing I've ever seen out of her.
Staying with you, Omar, given the fact that this was the best performance you've ever seen from her, what do you think could be next for her at women's strawweight?
You know, women's strawweight is kind of is very active right now. We've got Michelle Waterson-Gomez fighting this weekend against Marina Rodriguez. And to be honest, man, I would kind of like to see her fight the winner of that fight.
Okay, Mark, any other thoughts? Any other ideas?
I was actually going to say the loser of that fight. I get it being the winner. I kind of feel like Marina's going to win, and I feel like that's a little bit of a big step for Lupi. So I guess that's why I was imagining loser in my head. But hey, it could be winner too. She looked that good.
I can tell you what, man, she could definitely stand with Marina Rodriguez. Off of what I saw this past weekend, her striking might be a problem from Rodriguez. That might be a very, very good scrap.
Anybody you want to throw out there for a possible next opponent for Elise Reed?
Striker than Elise Reed.
Yes. No, that's not what I mean. I don't mean she's going to do the same thing to Elise Reed to Marina Rodriguez. But I do think that will be something, that would be a fight she can definitely win on her feet. Like, that is a competitive striking fight, I think, between the two of them. At least, again, based off of what I saw this last weekend. I thought her hands were super,
and she'd
super
probably
crisp.
look to wrestle in that fight too, which is what would make her so live.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mike, we don't need to do losers. We got too much to do, man. Let's keep it moving.
You're so right. Okay, because I'm excited to talk about this one. In the middleweight division, Roman Kopylov gets his fourth straight finish, knocking out Josh Fremd in the second round, official time 4:44. Mark, talk about it.
This fight gave us one of many examples of what can make fighting so great, which is that if you're watching this fight like with an untrained eye in round one, you're probably like, wow, these guys are pretty evenly matched. Like, this Josh Fremd guy is hanging right with this Roman Kopylov guy in the striking. And he was. But because we know, you could tell in every exchange the way Kopylov was settling in. You could tell the way he was making his reads, the way he was starting to set things up. And then by the last minute, you really started to see it. He was starting to time his shots. Fremd was getting clipped on counters. Then he obviously got his nose smushed with a spinning back fist right at the end of the round. And then round 2, it was Kopylov completely comfortable. All Kopylov in that round, and it just became a matter of time. And credit to him because he really took his time. He didn't rush it. He fought smart. He waited until he found the big shot, and he found it to the body. Just a perfect left to the liver, off switch, fight over. Super impressive from Roman Kopylov. And the KO run continues. 4 fights.
Yeah. This is a guy who lost his first 2 UFC fights. He went 0-2 in the UFC. His first fight in the UFC, he got submitted by Carl Roberson.
Which is mind-blowing, watching him today.
Yeah. And he's back to his winning and finishing ways. The only fight that he's won ever that went to the scorecards was his very first pro fight. Every single of the next 11 wins of his career have been by knockout. Omar, talk about it.
I think a couple of things that I took away from that fight. These are big dudes, man. And the pace that Kopylov has throwing strikes is kind of crazy, right? He's not I wouldn't compare him to a pressure fighter like Sean Strickland, for example, right? It's not like Kopylov walks people down, but the volume of his strikes and the timing of his strikes doesn't really allow for people to adjust very well in the moment. Right, the moment he resets, and the moment some guy probably thinks he's got a second or two, there's a kick coming, there's a punch coming, there's, you know what I mean? There's always something that he's doing, but he's not doing like a Colby Covington thing, or you know, where they're coming forward with multiple shots, moving forward with pressure, and just kind of using an excessive amount of volume with not a ton of power behind it. Kopylov has a perfect sort of grasp on the timing, on the use of power, on the pace. And I think he's really got a real pinpoint on the rhythm during the fight. And I think that's where his control comes from. At least with the guys that he's fought so far. Who knows how much his approach is going to work with guys who are not going to give him that opportunity, right? Who are going to fight against him trying to dictate the rhythm and the pace. But for right now, these guys who he has been fighting, he's been able to do that. And at the higher weight class, I think he just moves a little bit faster than a lot of these guys can react to. I can tell you from experience watching a lot of the higher level guys that are in my gym, there is a flow that a lot of them tend to have just from pad work and holding and things like that. And it just seemed like that's what Kopylov had, right? Like he just didn't have to think about what was next. Wherever his body was at the end of whatever strike, that was where he was, and that's where he was going to throw his next strike. And he flowed, and he just kind of kept moving. He was never really off base. It was a beautiful performance. Like I really love watching the kid's technique. He's really fun to watch. I was actually kind of surprised to realize how far away from the top 15 he is with the amount of talent I think he has. So it'll be interesting to see where Mark has him in the rankings, and I'm assuming where he's moved up to.
It's a little sad that he was supposed to face Anthony Hernandez as a replacement, but then Hernandez dropped out. And to that point, Hernandez is number 15 in the UFC's rankings.
Okay.
So that could have been
that would have been a huge opportunity for Kopylov.
Really would have catapulted him for sure.
But yeah, he's low for me. He's 41. Just
he's got to prove it.
You know, he hasn't beaten anyone really yet. I guess his best win is the Kiriko. It's De Kiriko, then Puna Soriano, Fremd, Claudio Ribeiro, and he lost to Duraev, which is okay, and he lost to Carl Roberson. So, like, the resume doesn't really dictate it just yet, but the talent, you know, and we're about to match the guy up, but, like, we're kind of here now where maybe we go up the line a little bit, and if we see another knockout, then it's kind of like, all right, we're going to have to do something here.
Yeah. Man, that Anthony Hernandez fight would have been fucking dynamite. Mark, staying with you here, go right into that point. Who do you think could be a great sweet spot matchup for Kopylov next?
Yeah, so as mentioned, I'm not going to go hugely up. I am going to take the winner of the upcoming Joe Pyfer and Abdul Razak Al Hassan fight, and I will pair that man with Kopylov. Those are all knockout artists. Probably get a banger. And then if he can beat one of those dudes, then I think he's on his way.
Omar.
Mine was a little bit different, though time frame seems relatively similar. I was actually going to go with the loser of the Bruno Silva Sharubutin Magomedov fight.
Okay. How about one Israel Adesanya?
Right, you're out of control. You're out of control.
I feel like middleweight, as I'm looking at the top 15
I thought you were
right
about
now.
to say you feel like that'd be a good fight. I was
I
like,
feel like
wrap it up.
I don't know. And middleweight is having one of these moments right now where a somewhat long-standing champ, gets taken off the throne, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, this division is like it's deep all of a sudden. It's kind of a
Middleweight has
murderer's row.
a good amount of interesting guys who have kind of popped up. Like obviously we have plenty of names of guys who have been there for a minute: the Stricklands, Vittoris, Cannonier, so on and so on.
Right.
Like Duplessis obviously has burst onto the scene, but even beyond that, like Roman Dolidze is a factor now. Brendan Allen is looking fantastic. This dude Alaskarov that debuted recently is only 1-0, but he looked great. Fluffy Hernandez, who we just said, Kopylov, Petrosky's working his way up. Like there's a lot of names of guys who are really kind of coming up. And Kyle Bohalio has looked awesome. He's undefeated so far. Like I could probably go on. There's interesting middleweights coming up.
Yeah, I feel like that has not always been the case in the middleweight division.
Yeah, I agree.
It has been there have been eras where the middleweight has been somewhat weaker than your lightweight and welterweight and featherweight, bantamweight.
For sure.
Okay, let's move on.
All right, let's keep moving.
Yeah, one more fight to sort of dissect a little bit before we jump into the lightning round. Okay, here we go in the women's flyweight division. Wait, flyweight?
Yes, flyweight.
Yes, women's flyweight division. Tracy Cortez takes home the W, defeating Jasmine. They were saying their name different again. Jasudavicius. God damn it.
Jasudavicius, I think.
Jasudavicius. I don't know.
Or is Jasudavicius?
It's a tough one, man. Mark, just start talking.
Dude, Tracy Cortez looked so improved. We were talking about Lupi's hands improving. Yes. How about Tracy Cortez's fucking hands? She was so much faster, which I expected. I thought it would be a key, and it was. But I never expected that level of crispiness from the hands. I mean, she was piecing Jasmine up in round one. But it's not huge power from Tracy, and because of that, as much as she was getting touched, Jasmine wasn't afraid to keep walking forward, and it did pay off in round two. She kind of swung it back toward her. Then she was able to get the takedown, change the fight with that. I'm not sure if she won round two, but it was certainly her best round. But then it didn't matter because she did lose round three. They scored it right. Tracy certainly won 1 and 3.
Yep.
And it was a scrap for sure. Jasmine didn't go away. She was in it, but Tracy outstruck her in round 3. And, she did what she had to do to make sure the decision went her way. It was a really nice return to the octagon for her after being out for a long time. And she's another one now who will probably get a pretty interesting opponent here.
Watching live, I thought the fight was pretty competitive and pretty close. And I was a little surprised to see 30-27 on 2 scorecards, but I do think overall the UD for Cortez was the right way to go. Omar, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought she looked great. First of all, I got to always shout her out for walking out to Salinas, because that's real right there. I love that one. Gonna make me go watch that movie, man. Anyway, Tracy Cortez got a lot of love from that Mexican crowd too. I don't know if you guys were paying attention to that moment, but there wasn't really anybody in the stands. Like, it was the prelims.
Yep.
Stands are pretty empty in the U.S. It's not a lot of these other countries. They're there from minute one, but in the U.S., for the most part, you see people trickle in little by little as the fights progress.
Right.
And that stadium was relatively empty when Tracy Cortez walked out. And if you had your eyes closed, you would not have been able to tell the difference, because
that's right.
They were shouting for her. They were cheering for her. I thought it was a real miss for her to not have been on the main card. I'm not really sure where the decision making was there. But if she's not on the main card in her next fight, I think that's a real missed opportunity. Just as an aside.
I agree. I thought it was strange that she wasn't on the main card. I didn't really get that.
Yeah. As far as her hands are concerned, man, her hands were looking absolutely great. She was landing those right hands on point. If there was any kind of criticism I would have in her striking, it would just be to keep her hands up. For every punch that she was landing on Jasudavicius, the left side of her face was swollen by the time that fight was over because Tracy got hit tons of time in the same spot, and it was just because her hands weren't up. They were just kind of off to the side here. They weren't coming up to defend herself. She was just allowing her left side to get hit and just leave it open. So I think there are things to work on in the striking department, obviously, but man, she looked absolutely fantastic for such a long layoff, a game opponent, and obviously a big spot for her from a crowd perspective, right? Like she didn't return to the apex, is my point, right? It wasn't a quiet apex where she can come and just chill and it's just another fight. People were there. The pressure was there. People were watching her. People were rooting her on. I think this was a big deal for Tracy Cortez, and I'm glad she walked away with the victory.
Yeah, I hope the promotion kind of takes note to the fact, just as you said, like even on the prelims when the T-Mobile was not at capacity yet, the crowd that was there was going apeshit for Tracy Cortez, and the girl is a star.
Yeah,
I mean, she improves now to 11-1. She hasn't lost a fight since her pro debut. So after losing her pro debut, she's now on an 11-fight win streak. She's now undefeated in the UFC. She's 5-0 in the UFC. She just, like you said, she beat a very talented opponent in Jasmine, whose last name I'm not going to butcher again to pay respects to her. I think it's fueled in part by Tracy Cortez's beauty, which is immense. She might be she's like the Latina Paige Van Zandt, but I think she's even more attractive than Paige Van Zandt. She's gorgeous.
But I think she's also a better fighter than Paige Van Zandt, personally.
And that's the second part of the point, is that like she, and the record shows it too. I mean, she's 11-1, and now she's undefeated in the UFC thus far, and she's, talent, beauty. She's like a total package, and it shows. And she's a star, and I think that the UFC is going to take note of the reaction that she got, the pop that she got from the crowd, and she should be a main card fighter going forward. That being said, as I said, 5-0 now in the UFC. Mark, give me her next possible opponent.
Yeah, I think it's time for her to fight a name. I get her, she had been out for a minute. I think Jasmine made perfect sense, but I think off of that win, she should be fighting a name. So I'm going to say the winner of the upcoming fight between Jennifer Maia and Viviane Araújo. It could even be the loser of that fight, theoretically, but both of those girls are a name in the division, and that's where Tracy's got to be at this point.
Omar,
that was actually that was actually what I had as well. I think it's really going to depend on how that fight ends, how that fight finishes, right? Because if somebody's injured or somebody can't kind of make a relatively good turnaround, then it might just end up going to one or the other just based on availability. But I do think that is the direction she needs to go, and that's the fight that it should work off of.
Okay, let us now hop into our lightning round. Here we go.
Super lightning. Come on, we can do it.
Super lightning. Literally, please, God, Jesus. Give me your quickest takes. Here we go. On the main card, in the bantamweight division, Raul Rosas Jr., the UFC's youngest fighter, gets another win this time over Terrence Mitchell, TKOing him in the first round, under a minute, the official time. 54 seconds of round number 1. Mark, go first.
Can I do this faster than he won? It happened quick. He showed off his hands this time, landed a huge left on Mitchell to put him down. He was all over him to his credit, didn't let him recover, and gets a huge bounce-back win. So well done for him on a big stage.
Omar.
Yeah, I think that Rosas has been working with a boxing coach, a pretty famous one on Instagram that puts us stuff all the time. It's Flamin' Mitts, I believe is his name, or something like that. But his hands look great, man. His wrestling looked pretty good too, but his hands were really the talk of the town for that night. Like, shut Terrence off and bowling pinned him, just completely starched him and watched him drop on the floor. Great performance from Rosas, and definitely the momentum he needs in the UFC.
All right, in a scrap in the lightweight division, Daniel Zellhuber gets it done over Christos Giagos by submission via anaconda choke in the second round. Omar, go.
Dude, Zellhuber is a scary, scary individual. The man is extremely big. He looks like a giant in that octagon. On top of the fact that his striking is on point, and he apparently also has a very good ground game as well, I would be very concerned about having to fight Daniel Zellhuber.
Mark.
Yeah, I agree. And this was a good little scrap. Giagos was doing a great job early, closing the distance and managing the range against obviously a much longer guy. He landed real hard on Zellhuber in round 1 and kind of tried to chase him down, but Zellhuber recovered really quickly. And from there, he fought really well. He kept the pressure on Giagos. He was undeterred. His takedown defense was amazing. And then, of course, he hurt Giagos with a right. Giagos shot, and he immediately cinches up the beautiful Anaconda. So, yeah, great win for him. He's really bounced back with two nice ones in a row now after the super weird dud in his debut.
All right, in a featherweight bout, Kyle Nelson defeated Fernando Padilla by UD. Mark, staying with you. Take it.
I thought Padilla fought a weird fight here, honestly. He seemed lazy to me. He never cut Nelson off offensively. You know, he was the one coming forward, but he was kind of just following Nelson around the cage. Defensively, it seemed like he wasn't really respecting Nelson, and I think those things kind of combined to cost him the fight. And Nelson always he fights the same, like, smart, buttoned-up fight where he's going to have the high guard, fire off some straight shots at you, and this fight, you know, that was enough. And maybe the calf kicks were a factor, as Dom said. Maybe Padilla was feeling it, and that's what made him kind of slow. But, yeah, disappointing for him as a follow-up after he debuted by, you know, finishing Julian Erosa. So, you know, that sucked for him. And another one for Kyle Nelson, who's kind of clawing his way back after a really rough start to his UFC career.
Okay, Omar.
Yeah, I actually had the same thought. Like, it was frustrating me watching this kid fight, and maybe the calf kicks did have something to do with it, but it seemed like it was more than that, because even his range management, the kid's 6'1". He does not need to be that close to Kyle Nelson to throw a cross, or a jab, or any of that shit. Not once were his hands fully extended out, his arms are fully extended out. Every single punch that he threw was completely smushed in. His elbows were completely bent. There's no power in them. I'm not sure what he was doing in there. It was really frustrating to see, especially having like interest in wanting to have watched him fight and see what he brought to the table. And like I said, he's got skills. He's got the dexterity in his body. Like, he can move his body in a way that would be very, very dangerous in a fight. But Jesus, did he not put it together at all?
Even in that fight, he had a moment. You know, he had moments where it was like, why isn't this guy beating Kyle Nelson?
Yeah.
Like, you could see the talent that's in there.
Yep.
Okay. In the flyweight division, tough one. Edgar Chairez and Daniel Lacerda's their fight ended in a no contest due to a premature stoppage in round number 1. Mark?
Yeah, this sucked for both guys, obviously. Yeah. And I get it that the arm dropped, okay. But you can't just call it as soon as you see an arm drop. Like, if you think he might be out, then grab the damn arm. See if it's truly limp. Don't just jump right in when you have no idea what's going on. So, yeah, it sucked for both guys. Would have been nice to see who could have gotten the W. You know, Lacerda was on his 5th shot in the UFC despite being 0-4, and he was actually doing all right. So the poor guy might have finally gotten a win, and he didn't even get a chance. So, yeah, it's a tough one.
Omar.
Yeah, if Mike Bell didn't shit the bed this weekend, we might have had something more to say about Chris Taglioni, but I guess we'll leave him alone. We don't got a lot of time for this episode to go through him, but it wasn't a great moment. I think something needs to be done about how these processes work, right? Like, even I had the moment when I saw his arms completely go down. I'm not a grappler. I don't pretend to be. So there are things that I know I don't feel, and I don't know how they feel. I know a little bit, but I don't know a ton, right? I don't consider myself a grappler to any extent. But when I saw his arm drop, I was like, oh, he looks fucked. And you're right. He needed to check the arm, not immediately just call the fight off. But there should have been a reaction. Just the one that Chris Taglioni did was the wrong one. A little premature.
Yep. Okay. Charlie Campbell from Long Island, round 1 knockout over Alex Reyes. Yeah, I met Charlie Campbell at Toro. He was cornering his teammate, the quiet man. How's his name? I'm blanking. I announced him. It'll come to you. Omar, go first.
Do I know this person? I feel like I know that nickname.
Mantello.
Which nickname for who?
That's the teammate. Is Mantello.
Oh.
Who is Mantello?
Yeah, I don't know him.
Quiet man. He fought at Toro, and I met Charlie there as well because he was they corner each other. They both train at. Oh man, I'm fucking tired. I can't. I'm just brain farting all over the place.
Well, you're fucking up the lightning of the lightning round. I can tell you that.
Just start.
They both train at the gym. Yeah, they train at the gym together. Yeah.
They train at the gym.
Yeah, it was a good fight up until it lasted, man. Charlie Campbell seemed to have his number. That man looked like he throws stones for hands, though, man. He looks like he's got power in that bitch. I'm not... As good as his striking was, I would love for it to be just a little tighter. There was one of those uppercuts in that fight that reminded me about the Tony Ferguson Gaethje uppercut exchange that was just a goddamn coin flip in the end. He kind of threw one of those, and I was like, oh, you can't be doing that, dude. You can't be doing that past this point, man. You might get away with it in the early fights in your career, but eventually that shit is the shit that'll get you knocked out by an elite fighter. So I think there's a little bit of tightening up that needs to be done, but he looked absolutely fantastic. The knockout was superb. Found Alex Reyes' chin on multiple occasions, and Reyes needs credit too for holding on as long as he did and eating as much as he did, because he should have been out after the first couple, and he wasn't. He definitely kept trying to fight back as long as he could. But fantastic performance from Campbell, and we'll definitely see him back in the octagon soon against, I'm assuming, somebody good.
Ray Longo.
Yeah.
They both train with Ray Longo. Okay.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah, I had the same exact take watching him fight. I was like, ooh, he got that killer be killed technique. Like,
Yeah.
you could just see. But hell of a debut for him, man. He's a fun addition to the lightweight division. He brings the pressure. He's got knockout power. He's a character on top of it. I don't know who he KO'd worse, Alex Reyes in the fight or DC in the interview, dropping the classic rock line on him. But, yeah, you can't debut better than that.
It's lucky DC did fucking bottom his ass right in the octagon.
DC got a little mad. He was like, I love a good WWE reference, so I'll let you live right now. Or
yeah. Yeah. DC was definitely ready to give his opinion. Like, oh, he asked. I'm ready. I'm ready with my opinion. And then he was like, shut the fuck up, DC. He's like, well, damn.
Then he was like, shout out to Dwayne Johnson. I'm a fan of this.
Yep.
That was awesome. What a great
It was
debut.
pretty funny. It was funny.
Dude, he's a talented striker, man. He's super talented.
Oh no, he's definitely got it. When it comes to the striking, he's definitely got it. Everybody, I think, most people could always use a couple tweaks here and there. So that comment doesn't really mean anything as far as how good or bad or anything like that. I'm just pointing out a specific thing in his actual performance that obviously I think needs to be tightened up. But that kid's got hands for sure. He is a fucking problem.
Yep.
And also, gotta love the alliteration. Charlie the Cannibal Campbell.
Yeah.
Oh, I like it. I
Awesome.
didn't know that. I didn't even hear that. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
man. All right, women's strawweight division closing us out here. Josephine Knutson defeated Marnik Mann by UD. Omar.
I don't know who Josephine Knutson is, but I'm gonna fucking remember from this day forward because she beat the shit out of this man girl. I don't know who either one of these women are. I didn't know much about them or anything about them before this fight. But Knutson went nuts. Huh?
Nice.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, dude, she went completely off on that girl from the striking to the ground. The striking was sexy. I'm just going to say it. It was sexy. It was at range, at distance, moving her feet in and out, never lost her base. I mean, very few times did her striking lead her into the clinch, I think unnecessarily or unwanted perhaps. But for the most part, she was picking this girl apart from range, man. And it was a beautiful sight to see. I definitely want to see what she's got going forward. So I will definitely have to keep my eye on Josephine Knutson.
I think it was Knutson, unfortunately, for your nuts joke.
Oh, come on. So close.
She's Swedish.
But, yeah. I mean, agree. She looked amazing. I also don't really know what to say about this fight without being mean, because I feel like one girl looked like she was UFC caliber and one girl just simply didn't at all.
That's fair.
Man didn't have anything to offer in there. She was just basically a punching bag for Knutson. So
And
unless
tough,
Knutson is
but-
like title contender level already, I just don't think Man has it necessarily. She was tough, agree.
Yeah.
But yeah, super dominant debut for Knutson. Definitely a name to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
And that does it for our lightning round. And for our recaps of Noche UFC in Las Vegas this past weekend. And now let's put a bow on this one by finding out who rose and who fell in Mark's rankings. Mark.
All right, we got 3 and 2. We'll do the fallers first. Christos Yagos drops 5 spots from number 28 to number 33 at lightweight after the loss to Daniel Zellhuber. And Fernando Padilla with the bigger drop. He's going down 12 spots. He debuted at number 29 in my featherweight rankings. The guy finished Julian Erosa. Kind of comes back down to earth a bit now, so he goes from 29 down to 41 after the loss to Kyle Nelson. Takes a little bit of the shine off Padilla. To the 3 risers, we'll work our way up. Flip side of that fight, Kyle Nelson goes from number 61 to number 40 in my featherweight ranking. So a nice jump for him. He started, I believe, 1-4 in his UFC career. He's rattled off a couple in a row now. So he is starting to get himself up into the mix. Flip side of the other fight I mentioned, the Yagos fight, Daniel Zellhuber goes from number 50 up to number 32 in my lightweight ranks. So big win for him. As I alluded to earlier, he did have this really odd debut where he kind of seemed like he had the jitters and starstruck or whatever it might be and just didn't show up against Trey Ogden, which is not a great loss. But since then, he's had 2 really big performances. The Yagos win's a solid win, so I did have to move him up the line. So he's at 32, and then the last one, the bigger name of the list for this week, is Jack. I still had Jack Della Maddalena down at number 20 in my welterweight rankings. I think he might have already been ranked in the UFC going to this fight. I can't recall, or he was just outside, but he hadn't really beaten his name quite yet, so he was still at number 20 for me, and he is now my number 11 welterweight after beating Kevin Holland.
Nice.
And that is it for the week.
Well, all right. Now, let's turn our attention to the news and the headlines in the world of MMA outside of the cage, inside the MMA sphere with Omar Artola. Omar?
All right. We don't have a ton this week, so we'll get right into it. Germaine de Randamie is looking like she is ready for her UFC return. Somebody might have told her that Amanda Nunes is no longer in the UFC. So she is ready. She's ready to come back, and she's eyeing Pena or Raquel Pennington to become a UFC champ again.
Wow,
so
I didn't know that. That's
how
good.
that works out for her.
I feel like they should push her to be the one, or unless they don't want 145 to be happening.
No, I don't. I can't.
Well, like,
imagine.
they should
I don't
have been
think
like,
145 is on the UFC website anymore.
You're right.
It is not. It's gone.
It's not.
Nope.
Damn.
That's what I'm saying. Somebody gave Germaine a call and was
Wait,
like, "Hey, so Amanda's gone."
Wait, but women's bantamweight is not on the website either. Oh yeah, it is. Sorry,
It's
you
on
gotta
the
scroll
very
way down.
bottom.
There's a
Yeah,
picture.
yeah.
There's no picture. That's what fucked me up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
So it's interesting. She is, for those of you who are unaware, Germaine de Randamie had a family. I believe she was the one who carried the baby with her partner and gave birth to their child. I can't remember. Son or I can't remember.
I would hope it was a child. Yes.
No, I can't remember if it was a son or a daughter, dick.
Child.
But anyway, she seems like she's doing well, recovering, training again, and looking to get back in the mix. So that's very exciting. Next on the list, we were talking about Pat Miletich not too long ago in regards to a fight that he has scheduled with Mike Jackson in a war of ideologies, because that always works. Pat Miletich was recently arrested for his 3rd DUI, basically, in like 4 years. So somebody needs to not let this man fight and like get him a therapist, because there is something going on with him that is not okay. He was charged with his first DUI back in 2019 in March, second one June 2021, and then again now September of 2023. So he's got a 2-year little gap here between each of his little fuck-ups. So if somebody doesn't get him now, we'll be back here in 2025 talking about Pat Miletich again having another DUI. So somebody get your boy. Next on the list, John McDessie in the news. So I know we've talked about this in our text message thread, and we were all, I think, very shocked to find out exactly how bad this really was, at least when it comes to the Australian government. But John McDessie shared his details of the pay breakdown that they get in a form or a paper, a PDF, some shit that is given to the fighters with all their information. So we found out a couple things. They apparently pay for their own medical, and they apparently also pay for their own airfare as well. I have to assume the medical works like insurance, though, where they probably have some kind of like deductible or copay or something like that. But like all the really expensive shit is actually covered by the UFC. I'm assuming that might be more how it works because they do get a lot of stuff done that I can't imagine is affordable. So maybe there's some give and take there. I don't really know how it works out, but they are getting charged for a medical fee of some kind. Maybe it's just the ER bill, maybe for the night. I don't know. But they're getting charged. The other thing that they're getting charged for is the airfare. And the airfare look like they're getting charged for the full airfare because that shit look expensive as shit. We don't see any of these guys flying first class. I have literally flown next to a UFC fighter in coach who was further behind me, to be honest. So, I don't know. It seems like they're having a rough time when it comes to that. Now, the other part that was interesting was that he showed the breakdown of what the government takes as part of their taxes. The Australian government took 45% of his net pay, or of his gross pay. So he took 45% of what he was getting paid that night, even before the medical and before the airfare gets tacked on. So right off the bat, 45% taken away. So that ended up being like 21 grand, 21.6 grand, which, damn. Like for somebody who's only making 50 grand a fight, right? Who, like Mark mentioned last week, McDessie fights once a year. So you just killed this guy's whole year. 50K in 1 year is not great either, but you killed his whole salary essentially and cut it in half and took it for yourself. 45% seems egregiously disgusting considering what these guys are doing and the fact that they're there for like a day. You know what I mean? It seems crazy.
And bear in mind that the U.S. is one of the only countries that if you're a U.S. citizen but you have a job somewhere else in a different country, the U.S. is like, well, you're still a citizen of us, so we're gonna reach out over there and tax your income over there. Not every country does that. I believe so.
Oh. Well, if
You're
that's true,
saying-
that's a
you're saying
dick
that
move
also
too.
got taxed by the U.S.?
Probably. Yep. Most likely.
Jesus
If he's wait, but isn't McDessie Canadian?
He is.
Oh, I don't know about Canada. Well,
Yeah, I have no
Okay.
idea.
I'm gonna sit back down.
Well, they all, as far as I'm concerned, just I get having to pay taxes to a certain extent. I get it. I'm not saying you got to take something from 45% is egregious. It's crazy. He's not from Australia. He's there for like a day. We barely used any of your services in the week that I was here. Like, take a smooth 10-15% and call it a fucking day. I don't understand why you need 45% of my money. It doesn't make any sense, man. It really doesn't.
It's robbery, is what it is.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. Australia should be ashamed of themselves.
Hashtag taxation is theft.
I was just going to fucking say that when you finished talking.
All right, so the next thing I have on the list, there are a lot of weird fighters or a lot of weird removals from the roster, according to UFC's roster watch Twitter. The first one we have on the list here is Ronnie Lawrence. Now, keep in mind that fighters being removed from the roster could not necessarily mean that they've been cut from the UFC, but perhaps that their contracts have expired, and so they have to have been removed from the roster until their contract issues have been resolved. So if Ronnie Lawrence fought out his contract, as an example, hasn't re-signed with the UFC, it is what it is. If he hasn't re-signed or anything like that, it's possible that is one of the reasons he's been removed from the roster. Inactivity is another reason why some people get removed from the roster as well, which we'll also go through. But sometimes people just get cut, which we'll also go through. So Ronnie Lawrence,
I'm just reading. It's him. He is halting his fighting career. He has to address some health issues that he's been dealing with for the last 2.5 years. So he's going to be stepping away from fighting indefinitely. He is going to, quote unquote, retire because he won't be fighting until he can resolve the health issues.
what I heard was he ain't trying to have USADA up his ass while he's figuring it out, is what it is.
He goes on. He says that basically what's happening is if he trains hard or trains more than a couple days, if he's developing cyst acne along his jawline and chin area,
Oh.
And then it's developing on his face, usually ends up turning into staph infection.
Oh,
He's
no.
had staph maybe 15 to 20 times in the last 2.5 years, which has made training absolutely horrible. Jesus, God, it's fucking crazy.
Bro, I've had staph infection now twice since training at my gym. Nothing wild, nothing like what we've seen, some of these UFC fighters go through where they're getting shit like dug out of their leg and crazy shit like that. But stuff that I need, like, a medical ointment or whatever, usually it ends up being like, sometimes I'll get cut during training, or like I'll get especially when we're clinching and stuff like that, like I'll get a lot of like scratches and stuff like that on my neck or whatever. And I am literally a ball of sweat, and we're rolling around. We're doing a lot of weird shit. So it can happen from time to time. I'm pretty diligent about showering, obviously, and shit like that. So I don't get a ton of them, but it does happen. Apparently staph just lives on all of our skin as it is. So if we don't, keep it in check. Yeah. The first time I got it, I went to see a dermatologist, and that was what she explained to me. And getting staph is not that big a deal as long as it's not the type of staph that can't be essentially treated properly without a lot of care and craziness to it, because there are different strains and variants of staph infection and stuff like that. So not to get too off topic, but 15 to 20 staph infections is fucking crazy. That is unheard of. I've never heard that in my life.
Yeah.
Especially in 2 years. That's Jesus. Anyway, back to where this all began from. The next fighter that has been removed from the roster, according to Roster Watch, is OSP. I'm not sure if that is an inactivity thing or if that is a contract thing or what.
He popped.
He popped?
Yeah.
What the fuck didn't I hear about this? I go online all the time looking for stuff. I didn't see anything about this.
I just saw it earlier today. Both him and Casey O'Neill popped.
Oh, well, that explains the Casey O'Neill one. Or Courtney Casey?
Oh, I thought I read Casey O'Neill. It was Courtney Casey?
Well, Courtney Casey's who got removed from the roster, so
maybe I read it wrong. Maybe it was Courtney Casey. Yeah, the St. Preux one, he's been suspended for 6 months. Tested positive for dehydroandrosterone from tainted supplements.
Oh, geez.
Starting from June 17th, he'll be eligible to fight again on December 17th.
Jesus Christ.
So I don't know if the removal is just something that happens when you're suspended, or
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they just take you off of the roster at that point. The one that we know is a cut is Derek Brunson. So Derek Brunson has been released from the UFC. His fight with Roman Dolidze has been scrapped, and we're all looking for answers. So there's that.
Wait, he already was booked and they cut him?
Yeah.
He was supposed to fight Roman Dolidze like fairly soon.
In October, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Why would they cut a guy they booked?
I don't know. I want the explanation so bad. Like if it was him or like what the fuck happened.
Yeah. I'm not really sure what happened there. And then the last person removed from the roster.
It is Courtney Casey that I saw that was suspended.
Okay. And the last name removed from the roster is Zara Firin.
Yeah, well, that one makes sense.
And that's why I ended with that one, because that one I was like, that makes sense. This makes sense. I can't remember her winning a fight as of recent, so that I totally see that.
I think she was 0-4.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, we got a couple of fight announcements, and then we can move right along. Nothing too crazy. Javid Bashrat versus Victor Henry rebooked for UFC 294 on October 21st. That fight is pure madness. I'm so glad that fight got rebooked. Said Nurmagomedov versus Moon Gafri.
Gafarov.
Oh, yo. These red, incorrect lines that I'm getting in my notes app is really fucking with how I'm reading these letters. Gafarov has been added to UFC 294 again on October 21st. Ismail Bonfim versus Vince Pichel has been added to UFC Sao Paulo on November 4th. Pat Sabatini versus Diego Lopes. That is in the work for UFC 295 on November 11th in New York City, along with Jamal Emmers versus Dennis Bazooka Buzukia. Another gentleman out of the Serra-Longo camp. Lucy Pudilova versus Eileen Perez has been added to UFC's Vegas 82 card on November 18th. And last but not least, Veronica Hardy, wife of Dan Hardy, back in the octagon versus Jamie Lynn Horth. That fight will be happening on December 2nd in the flyweight division. And that is all we have for you this week.
Very nice.
Very nice. Okay, preview time. Let's do this. Daddy's got to go to bed. My apologies to our audience.
2 organizations to fucking preview still.
Oh, my God. My apologies to our audience who takes notice of some yawning because Daddy's tired.
I've been yawning.
It's all good. Here we go. We have Bellator and UFC action. Let us do Bellator first. We have Bellator 299 going down in Dublin. Eblin versus Edwards is the headliner. This card has 21 bouts.
Sure does. Freaking insane.
Bellator keeps doing this. They
Yes,
do
they
like it's like they're doing smokers in like the basement of their gym somewhere and
Yes.
selling. It's like the
Yes.
more fights they book, the more tickets they sell because everybody brings their families and their friends.
I think they're like,
I'm
we don't
like,
know how many
why?
events we're going to be putting on. So, like, we're just going to get all you guys on the card, get you one more paycheck.
Dog.
Right.
When I tell you how long these events can sometimes be, like when I go to a lot of the amateur events, that's technically where you usually see
Oh yeah.
these like 20 plus cards. Bro, we are there. And then they have the audacity to put on an intermission. How dare you, sir? It's already like, we're already here for 2 hours. Keep it fucking moving. How are you going to make me wait even longer?
Sometimes
great
though,
point.
from a production standpoint though, you just gotta pee. You because they go bout to bout to bout to bout.
Yeah.
It's
Let's keep it moving.
It's not for the announcer, because sometimes if a bout starts and it's like after the first minute you're like, okay, I'm pretty sure no one's gonna get knocked out in this fight. Like it just kind of seems like a spar. You're like, okay, I'm gonna run, I'm gonna pee. But the commentary table, they don't get a break. They talk for the whole time. So the intermission's kind of for them as well.
Fair.
Tell you, it's not for me. Fucking sitting there sweating my ass off waiting for them to keep going.
Okay, so before we talk about any of the, looks like 6 bouts that we're going to talk about, any other fights or fighters that you guys want to spotlight for our listeners?
Yeah, there's definitely some names worth keeping an eye on. Looks like I don't know if this bout order is right or not, but the first fight listed is Kasan Magomed Sharapov versus Pyotr Nidzielski. That's a pretty solid featherweight fight. Davey Gallen's on the card. Luka Poklit's fighting Roman Feraldo. That's a good fight. Kieran Clark, who's still undefeated, is on the card again. Charlie Warden, Gregory Babine. That's not maybe the highest level fight, but someone's probably sleeping. Peter Quealy's on the card. Maybe he can finally get a win in Dublin. Poor guy gets the most incredible receptions in the world and then just loses every time he fights in Dublin. I could probably keep going, but yeah, definitely some names worth watching.
Luke Trainer's on this card too, actually. Luke Trainer's a motherfucker.
Yep, that's another one.
Peter Quealy. I have to say it like that. I just have to. All right, first up. On the prelims in the lightweight division, Mansour Barnaoui, I believe is how you say the name. J.J. Wilson is his opponent. For this couple early ones, I won't cue them up like I usually do. So, Mark, why don't you just give us your quick take and pick?
Keep him moving. Okay, Barnaoui is actually a bigger favorite than I even expected. He's minus 325. J.J. Wilson is plus 225. 1 inch of height and 3 inches of reach for Barnaoui. Both of these dudes have shown some big potential at times in there. This is a tough crossroads fight for both of them, though. They both kind of need this win. Wilson's coming off a split decision win over Vladimir Tokov. He's only 1-1 since having to move up to lightweight due to his struggles to make 145. Barnaoui's coming off that war with Brent Primus that knocked him out of the lightweight Grand Prix. And I like J.J. Wilson. I liked him a lot at 145. I think he's got a lot of talent. I think he'll be dangerous in this fight, but I do think he's probably going to get taken down. He's a bit wild. He kind of gets comfortable off his back because he's obviously a skilled jiu-jitsu player, but I think he might end up just spending too much time on the bottom in this fight. So, hopefully we get some fun striking exchanges too, because they're both certainly capable of that. But I think Mansour might win the grappling, and that might be what edges it. So I will say UD for him.
Omar.
Yeah, I'd have to agree as well. I think both of these guys are super talented. I think J.J. Wilson has really good striking, or at least explosive striking, if nothing else. But Mansour, I think when it comes down to it, if he does end up getting into trouble, I don't see him getting slept to the point where he won't be able to react and defend himself against a bad situation and be able to take it down to the ground and then continue to work from there. So I just think there's going to be more avenues to success for Mansour there, barring some kind of flash knockout, which again I don't foresee happening. So I'll go with Barnaoui by unanimous decision.
I agree with you guys, but I'm going with the Maori kid, the kid who does the haka at his weigh-ins. This is a terrible pick, but I'm going to go with J.J. Wilson. Give me J.J. Wilson by decision because Mansour Barnaoui has never been finished. Okay, next up we have, where are we here? Not Chokheli.
Just straight to the main card.
Yes.
Sabah Homasi. Yeah.
Sabah Homasi taking on, is it Levan? Chokheli?
Yes.
Look at me. Okay, Omar, start us off.
I like Sabah Homasi. I think if there's any criticism to Sabah Homasi is that the kid's got one good round in him and then it all goes to shit after that. So if Sabah Homasi doesn't win in the first round, I don't see him winning a decision. I don't know a ton about Levan. What I can tell you is that he's got more of a gas tank than Sabah Homasi is. And I think if he can survive the first round, I think he wins that fight. Surviving a first round with Sabah, though, is a lot easier said than done. I will give him that kind of credit because he does find a way to turn people off in the first round. But if he does fuck around too much, he's going to end up in the second round, and then we're all going to see it go to hell from there. So I'm going to take a safer pick here, and I'm going to go with Levan here by unanimous decision. But do not be surprised if Sabah puts that kid face down in the first round.
That definitely could happen, but I also am going to go with Levan because at this point I don't trust Homasi. He himself has been finished 9 times in his career, and I love your assessment that he's kind of a first round guy. So give me Levan. I'll say round 2 knockout. Mark.
I think those are probably the smart picks. Vegas agrees. Chokheli, I can't remember if it's just like Chokheli or if it's Chokheli. I forget how he says it. But he's minus 230. Sabah's plus 180. The height is the same. There's 2 inches of reach on the Levan side. And he's good. He's 3-2 in Bellator so far. One of the losses is to Goichi Yamauchi, which is going to happen. And he's certainly got the game to grind out Sabah and not give us many striking exchanges if he chooses to go that route. But he's also a pretty good striker, so I think he may want to show that he can strike with Sabah, and maybe he pays for it. Like I said, I think the smart call is probably him winning a decision, but I've enjoyed what I've seen from Sabah as of late, even in the losses. I want to believe that he can get this done, so I'm going to pick him. I'll say he has him hurt in round 1 and then finishes him early in round 2. I'll say Sabah Homasi, round 2 KO.
Okay, moving right along here. In the featherweight division, Mads Burnell taking on Daniel, is it Weichel? Weichel? Does anybody know?
Weichel.
Weichel?
Right? Daniel Weichel? Now I forget. Man, it's hard to remember these Bellator guys. You don't see them fight for a fucking minute because they're on like a YouTube undercard one day and then they're back on the main card the next. Yeah, Weichel. Daniel Weichel.
Yeah, Weichel.
Yeah.
He's
You're not going to remember the guy who's like number 20 on the card.
Daniel Weichel. Marco.
Was that your German accent?
It wasn't.
Bro,
great.
my German is chef's kiss.
All right. Mads is favorite. He's minus 270. Weichel's plus 210. 2 inches of height and 2 inches of reach on his side, though, Weichel's side. He is going to be making his 57th walk to a cage in this one as a pro. And Mads Burnell, despite losing 2 of his last 3, is a guy whose talent I still believe in. And that means I'm going to need to trust that he can beat a 38-year-old Daniel Weichel. And it's no easy feat. There hasn't really been any big fall-off or anything as of yet from Weichel. But I got to trust Mads here. I'm going to say that Weichel's probably a little too slow, that Mads puts a little too much pressure on him, and that he's even slick enough to edge Weichel on the mat if it ends up there. Weichel's a well-rounded dude. He always has been. But I'm going to go with Mads Burnell by UD.
That is a lot of fighting in a cage.
Yeah, it is.
Too many miles. I don't like it. 38 years old, 700 fights. I totally agree. Mads Burnell's going to take this one. Give me Mads Burnell by UD. Omar.
Any guesses as to when his first fight was? Like what year his first fight was?
2001.
Mark?
His first pro fight. 2004.
2002. Mike wins. There we go.
Trivia.
Impromptu trivia.
That was trivia.
Yeah, man. I don't necessarily give Daniel Weichel for shit for being 38 years old. But what I do give him shit for is his inconsistency inside of the cage. He's got wins, he's got losses. He doesn't really have a lot of solid momentum going across. And when it comes to hang on, wrong card here, my bad. When it comes to Mads Burnell, I just think he's one of these guys that is constantly active in there and constantly trying to win. His scrambles, I think, are kind of something that are important to his game, not necessarily always allowing somebody to take control of him and kind of get the better of him. He's always active and always moving, always throwing punches. He's been beaten, obviously, before, but he's had some really good momentum up until that point, and he just won his last fight. So I'm going to stick with Mads Burnell here. I think he can get a unanimous decision done over Daniel Weichel.
Okay. Weichel. That's German. Thank you. If you want any lessons, let me know. Okay. Going over to the women's featherweight.
Who'd you pick? Did you pick?
Yeah, bro.
Oh, you did? Who'd you say?
Yeah.
You said, yeah, I'm sorry. That's right. You said Burnell as well. My fault. I remember.
It's all good.
I just didn't write it down.
Okay. Women's featherweight division. Sinead K.O. Kavanaugh taking on Sarah Collins. Mark, why don't you start us off this time?
Pretty tight odds here. Sinead is minus 135. Sarah Collins is plus 115. The height is the same. The reach is the same. It's a big step up for Sarah Collins here in her career. She's only 4-0 as a pro. Easily the most established fighter that she has fought to this point. Sinead's a vet. She's been around. It doesn't have a ton of fights, but she's fought kind of a who's who. I do think it's a coin toss. It wouldn't shock me to see Sinead just kind of put hands on her. But Collins is a solid judo player, and I'm going to say she can drag this one down a couple times and maybe find a sub. So I will say round 2 sub for Collins.
Nice pick. Omar.
That would be some shit, wouldn't it? I don't necessarily disagree with that take. I'm not super sold on Sinead Kavanaugh, but at the same time, I do think that she has the experience under her belt compared to Sarah Collins, at least in the MMA world specifically. And I do think the hands are going to make a little bit of a difference, especially early on if she can get her hands on her. We've seen instances where judo works a ton when performed properly. But we've also seen instances that if you can't get them down to the ground or you can't get that clinch, a lot of games tend to go to hell. So I think that if Kavanaugh plays her cards right and plays and approaches the fight in a smart way, I think she has the tools to get this done. So I will also go by unanimous decision. I wouldn't even be surprised to see her knock the girl out, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the experience here. She just has more flight hours here. Is Sinead Kavanaugh. That's my Irish. I just want to be Irish, though. Guys, I want to be Irish. Or Scottish. Scottish even more. Dude.
Aren't you part Scottish?
No, I'm part Norwegian. But not really. Like, not in any meaningful way. I'm an American guy.
My dad just got back from Scotland. It looks like it was freaking awesome in the pictures.
Dude, Scotland is a fucking cool country, man. I just want to talk like them. Dude, one time, real quick story, real quick. At my old job at the Apple Store in New York, it's a global store. People from all over the world come through that store, right? So these two dudes come up into the store, and they're clearly like some kind of like European or I don't know what, but like they're talking to each other in some kind of language. And I go over to them to try to help them, and I'm like, oh, they're conversing together. They're figuring something out. And I'm standing there for like 2 minutes until I realize they're talking in English, but they're from Scotland. And I thought that they were speaking a fucking foreign language. It was so different. It was just like,
Yeah.
it's everybody's good. Suppose everybody, you know.
Dude, thick Scottish is really hard to understand.
It's so hard to understand.
Although I
like,
was telling my dad that before he went, and then when he got back, I was like, how many people did you have trouble understanding? And he was like, none. It was very easy. And I was like, what? Really?
you were like, Dad, how many people did you have trouble understanding? He was like, well, you know, Mark, you got your asses in the windy. Okay. All right. Let's move on. I'm taking Sinead by UD. Okay, fun one here. Co-main event, Bellator 299. In the featherweight division, Aaron Pico taking on Pedro the Game Carvalho. I'll cue this one up. Aaron Pico, still only 26 years old, out of California. He's 11-4 as a pro thus far. 9 finishes, 7 of them are knockouts. After dropping a fight to Jeremy Kennedy with his shoulder injury back in October of 2022, he jumped right back in the win column, defeating James Gonzalez by decision this past April. Pedro the Game Carvalho, the 28-year-old out of Portugal, his record stands at 13-7 heading into this weekend with 8 finishes, 6 of them submissions, and he is looking to jump right back into the win column after losing to Jeremy Kennedy as well in his last bout, this back in February. Mark, start us off. Give us those odds, and then give us your take and your pick.
The odds are not close. Aaron Pico minus 1,000.
Holy shit.
Pedro Carvalho plus 600. Personally, I think that's a little ridiculous. Like, this is not Khabib that we're talking about here. But I do think Pico's going to win. To give you the stats quick, 3 inches of height on the Carvalho side. The reach is actually the same. Carvalho beat Mads Burnell 2 fights ago, which I don't know what to do with. I still can't believe he beat Mads, but he is 2-4 in his last 6. Sure, he's got some tricky skills. He's tough to hold down. He can strike from range, but I don't think it matters in this particular matchup. I think that Aaron Pico is that good, and I think he finally breaks through here and moves past this level of opponent for good into truly the title picture and maybe out of Bellator eventually. But I think he finishes Pedro. I'll say it's a body shot and ground and pound in round 2.
Omar, why are you picking Carvalho with the upset?
Nah, man. Aaron Pico's good, man. Aaron Pico's got so much talent, so much raw talent that it's very difficult to want to pick against him or to even think about picking against him in a spot like this where I think he has a clear advantage, both in the striking, to be honest, and potentially in the ground game as well. For all the rolling around and the stuff that Pedro sometimes likes to do, I just don't think there's anything that Aaron Pico is not going to be prepared for in that fight. And like I said before, his striking is crisp. His hands are really, really nasty, and he throws a lot of power in them. He's had time, obviously, to continue to get better. His last performance was dominant, but I think I expected even a little bit more from him at that point. It's possible he was still kind of dealing with the loss from Jeremy Kennedy, the shoulder injury and kind of recovering from that, because it wasn't – his return to the cage was not that much longer after his shoulder got fucked up. So it's possible now he's had more time to recover. Hopefully that's the case and we see a better version of Aaron Pico because, like I said, he was still good in his last fight, but I think we know that he can be even better.
Yeah, this is the Aaron Pico era. The guy is such a talent, such a star. I think it was a bit of a blip, obviously, with that shoulder injury. which felt like it did feel like a momentary just derailment of the Aaron Pico train. But he got back to his winning ways this past spring, and I think he's just going to keep rolling. Give me Aaron Pico by knockout, I'll say round 3.
I don't know if I said mine specifically, but I'm going UD for mine.
Okay. Main event time. Bellator 299. Johnny Diamond Hands Eblen taking on Fabian the Assassin Edwards. Johnny Eblen is the 31-year-old fighting out of Boca Raton, Florida, undefeated as a professional fighter. 13 wins, no losses. 6 of those wins are finishes. 5 of them are knockouts. Most recently, he defeated Anatoly Tokov by unanimous decision this past February at Bellator 290. He will be standing across from Fabian Edwards, the 30-year-old, out of Birmingham, West Midlands, England.
Birmingham.
What did I say?
No, I said it British, how Leon says it.
Oh, you're right. Birmingham. Is that right? 12-2 as a pro, with 7 finishes, riding a 3-fight win streak, coming into this weekend defeating Lyoto Machida, Charlie Ward, and Gegard Mousasi. Not bad. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick, and, of course, the odds.
All right. Pretty wide for a title fight. Johnny Eblen is minus 500. Not shocking, though. Fabian Edwards is plus 375 as the underdog. The height is the same. There is a 5.5-inch reach advantage for Fabian Edwards, which is honestly more than I was expecting when I went to look that up. And it's absolutely possible that Fabian could make that a factor because his game kind of plays into that. So for as long as this one takes place on the feet, it could be interesting how he's able to use that reach. Problem is, I just don't think we spend that much time there. I know Eblen has looked very good on the feet and seems comfortable there, but I don't see why he wouldn't look to be primarily a wrestler in this fight. I know Gegard didn't have a ton of success in taking down Fabian Edwards where I thought that he could, but I think Johnny Eblen is a different animal than Gegard Mousasi when it comes to the wrestling. And I think he will take Fabian down a lot. I think he grinds on him. I think he outpaces him. Mat returns, things like that to tire him out. I think he keeps pressure on him and just eventually drowns him in there. And who knows? I paid for it last fight, obviously not believing in Fabian Edwards. I was sure he could not beat Gegard Mousasi, and I was wrong on that. So I could be wrong, but I'll be very surprised if I am. I just think Eblen is the better fighter here. I'm going to say round 3 TKO for Johnny Eblen via some ground and pound.
So I don't think that this fight gets finished, personally. I do think Fabian Edwards is very good, and I think he's actually gotten better over the course of his time here in Bellator. And I do like Johnny Eblen. I think Johnny Eblen has continuously proven that he is one of the best in the middleweight division. The only problem I really have at this point is Johnny Eblen's propensity to get hit. Right? As good as Johnny Eblen is, as dominant as a lot of his performances are, he gets tagged, and he gets tagged quite a bit. And the problem is one of these days you're going to get a striker who's going to have enough power to put you out with one of the strikes that ends up landing on you eventually, right? Eblen has decent defense, but it could be tighter in those exchanged moments. A lot of his defense, I think, relies on timed takedowns and not always conventional blocking and using your fucking guard to block properly. And I think that leaves him open quite a lot sometimes. And I think earlier on in the fight, when Fabian's got his legs under him, when Fabian doesn't have a ton of damage on him, when he's got his speed, where his gas is at its peak, I just see that being a really difficult time for Eblen, especially, like I said, in the first round. There's a lot of danger there. So I think if Eblen can get past that point, and especially if he can get his game working early and start wearing on Fabian Edwards, I think it will work in his favor, and I do think Eblen will win by unanimous decision. But don't sleep on Edwards. That first round, I think maybe in the first 2 rounds, are going to be real paramount to how that fight goes.
I have not been on the Johnny Eblen train. In fact, looking back on a lot of different Bellator fights that he's been a part of, I feel like I've picked against him more often than otherwise. I had high hopes for Tokov in that last fight, and boy, was I wrong. So I'm going to not pick against Johnny Eblen now because he's fucking undefeated. He is 13-0. Is he a only Bellator guy? No, he has fought his first few fights with Shamrock. Wow. That's Ken Shamrock's little promotion there. Good for him. Yeah, I'll take Johnny Eblen by UD. That's the pick. I like Fabian Edwards a lot. I love both Edwards brothers' fighting abilities, but I'm going to roll with the undefeated champ and Johnny Eblen. Okay,
Nice.
That does it for our Bellator 299. Now let us quickly shift focus to the UFC. This coming weekend, the UFC has UFC Fight Night Fiziev versus Gamrot going down at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, headlined by two notable lightweights, Rafael Fiziev taking on Mateusz Gamrot. Before we talk about the handful of fights, looks like we're going to talk about 5 fights on this card. Any other fights or fighters that you guys want to quickly touch on and spotlight for our fans?
To be honest, like, the prelims are decent. You could probably watch all of them and probably enjoy yourself. I mean, you've got a lot of good opportunities there to see some fights that are pretty decent to watch. Mizuki Inoue and Hannah Goldie are fighting. Muhammad Usman and Jay Collier are fighting. That fight could be absolutely amazing. That fight could also be a fucking snooze fest, if we're being 100% honest. It really depends on how that fight goes. But there is the possibility for both ends of the spectrum on that one. You got Malkoun versus Cody Brundridge, which is another beast of a fight. Tim Means versus Andre Fialho, another great fight. I mean, there's some good ones on here. We're not going to go through all of them in depth. We're just going to stick to the main card for this one. But it's on paper, there are some decent potential fights on here, or some potential for some decent fights on here for this upcoming weekend in the prelims.
I feel like you named every fight other than my one favorite fight that's on the prelims, which is Dan Argueta and Miles Johns.
By the time I realized I had named all of the fights, I was like, I got to leave them one. Like,
I also like Means and Fialho. That should be a real scrap.
Yeah.
But, Argueta and Johns is a fun fight. Argueta is a guy who I don't know that I necessarily believed in when he made it to the UFC. But his last performance against Ronnie Lawrence was super impressive. So I'm very interested to see what he can get done against Miles Johns.
Great nickname, Dan Argueta, the Determined.
That's a terrible nickname.
I like the Tim Means and Fialho fight a lot. That's a purist's fight right there. They're not two household names. Tim Means is a veteran's veteran. Tim Means is the kind of fighter who you could play the game of, like, what other career does this guy look like he could do?
You say this all the time about poor Tim Means.
Do I? Have I said it before?
Yes, 100%.
I'm sorry. God, I'm turning into my father. Just forget that I say things and I say them again like 5 months later.
I'm not knocking you. I just felt bad for poor Tim Means.
Dog, I find myself doing shit like my father all the time now that I'm getting older. I just do shit and I stop myself sometimes. I go, well, I am my father now. No, that's just who I am.
It's DNA. Okay, let's jump in here. Here we go. The first fight that we are going to discuss is going down in the featherweight division, and Charles Air Jourdain taking on Ricardo Ramos. So, Air Jourdain, 27 years old, out of Quebec, Canada. He is 14-6 with 1 draw, 12 finishes out of his 14 wins. Most recently, scoring a UD over the Gracie family legend in Kron Gracie. Well, a legend more so in jiu-jitsu, but not so much in MMA. He will be standing across from, is it Ricardo Ramos?
Ramos, yeah.
Okay. The 28-year-old out of Sao Paulo, Brazil. He's 16-4 with 4 knockouts and 7 submissions. Also coming off of a nice knockout victory over Danny Chavez back in June of last year. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick of Jourdain versus Ramos.
I love this fight. Two guys at really similar points. I think the winner really will show something here. Odds are tight. Jourdain is the favorite. He's minus 145. Hamosh is plus 120 as the dog, so small underdog. The heights are the same. There is 3 inches of reach on the Hamosh side of things. And it's a hard one to pick. They've both shown a ton of skills. They both have been a little up and down at times. Hamosh has definitely shown how dangerous he can be. Obviously, we saw that nasty spinning back elbow where he KO'd Danny Chavez in his last fight. Hasn't fought in a minute because he had a little bit of trouble making 145. I forget what he weighed in at when he tried to fight his last fight. It was like 153 or something absurd, which is wild for a guy that used to fight at 135. But he's back now. Hopefully he will be making weight so we can enjoy this fight. But I am going to go with Jourdain here. I think it's a really close fight that could be a firefight, and Jourdain is the one that kind of strikes me as being a bit more physical and even more so a bit more comfortable. I think he just carries a bit more of that veteran poise in what I think will be a firefight, and I think I'm going to lean on that. Like, skill for skill, it's really close, but I think Jourdain is the one who cannot be rattled in there, who can make the adjustments, and who can take at least 2 of these rounds. So I will say Charles Jourdain, UD.
Omar.
Yeah, I got to say, I really like Charles Jourdain in this fight. I think Ricardo Ramos is a decent fighter. I think he's got a lot of power in his hands. But I just think Charles Jourdain is just a little bit slicker. I think he's a little bit more technical in there. I think he definitely has there is definitely a world where Jourdain gets caught with a big strike. Could be an elbow, could be a punch, could be a kick. But I just think Charles Jourdain's striking in his stand-up is really good, man. I think his defense is good. I think his striking is good. I think that he'd be able to stand in there with Ricardo and really put it on him. I think if the fight goes down to the ground, I think that might be where we see a little bit more from Hamosh than we would from Jourdain. I think Jourdain has a bad habit of being complacent on the ground sometimes, especially from a bottom position. So in that case, just from a points perspective, I think he could potentially lose in that sense. But I do think Jourdain has a little bit more avenues to success, I would imagine, especially, like I said, on the feet. So I will go with Charles Jourdain here by unanimous decision.
I concur, Doctor. Honestly, guys, this is more of a fan pick for me because I'm a Charles Jourdain fan. So I'm going to say Jourdain is going to knock him out. And I'll say that it's going to happen in the 3rd round. And there you have it.
Bold.
Okay, next fight up. Here we go. Brian Battle taking on A.J. Fletcher. It's going down 3 rounds in the welterweight division. Brian Pooh Bear Battle is the 28-year-old fighting out of Charlotte, North Carolina. At this point, he is a 9-2 middleweight with 7 finishes, 3 knockouts, and 4 submissions, coming off of a first-round knockout victory over Gabe Green back in May of this year at UFC on ABC 4. His opponent, A.J. Fletcher, the Ghost, is the 26-year-old out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 10-2 as a pro. Funny, his nickname is the Ghost because usually you don't see ghosts, but you can never miss this giant, jacked man. You know?
He's not giant, but he is jacked.
Well, giant in the sense that he's jacked. Shut up. You know what?
No, because he's known for being kind of tiny as a welterweight. So that's why I was saying that.
I
But
just
he's
mean
jacked.
that he's
Yes.
just like,
Yes.
if you were at Starbucks, you'd be like, Jesus, that guy's fucking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd be like, no way that guy can turn around completely with the way how big he is. It's not possible.
I'm aware. He's like 5'9" or something as a welterweight, right?
I don't remember. I just know
Actually, I have it right here. He's 5'10".
Yeah.
That's fucking normal. What do you mean?
No, I think it's his reach that they always. Wait, I have this. I mean, Battle's reach is long, but you'll hear the reach difference in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. He might
Why
have
don't you
T-Rex
just go
arms.
straight
I
into it,
think he
Mark?
has
Go
T-Rex
straight into it.
arms. I think that's what it is for Fletcher.
Yeah, go straight into it.
Me? Okay. So Brian Battle is the favorite. He's minus 185. AJ Fletcher is plus 155 as the dog. Battle is 3 inches taller, and he will have a 10-inch reach advantage, which is absolutely crazy.
That is crazy.
I don't really understand why Brian Battle is fighting AJ Fletcher, to be honest. Battle's won 4 of 5 in the UFC. He just KO'd Gabe Green in seconds. And they give him a guy who's 1 and 2 in the octagon thus far in AJ Fletcher. I don't really get it. And I'm not saying Fletcher doesn't have talent, because he's shown that he does. He did look good in his last fight, but the resume just doesn't dictate that he should be fighting Brian Battle right now. So I don't know. But that aside, I do think Brian Battle can get this done, and that he will handle Fletcher. Fletcher's physical. He's strong. Mike, jacked. He can do a bit of everything, definitely. But Battle's just so much bigger, and he's the more proven fighter. And I think he can use that range. I think he can fight a smart fight, pick Fletcher apart, break him down a bit. Fletcher tends to force things when that starts happening, and I think eventually he will present an opportunity for Brian Battle to find a finish, and I'm going to say it is a round 2 submission for Brian Battle.
Omar.
Yeah, I would also have to agree. I'm not really sure how AJ Fletcher got this fight. Maybe it was availability. Maybe it was how the cards were dealt. I have no idea. It seems really weird to me, too. I will say that Brian Battle is one of these guys that I feel like nobody expects anything from this kid. Like, I don't think they look at him and see anything but just another guy coming through the octagon. And I've said, even from Tough, that this kid has a ton of heart. He doesn't have... I think what he does miss, at least visually, is that raw talent, right? Sometimes you can watch a guy and just see he's got the coordination of his body and mind. He's got, all these little technical things that make his style look good, his form look good, and you would imagine that he can apply that in a fight. Some guys that look really good when they're training or when they're striking, when they're holding pads, aren't always the best fighters in practice, right? Sometimes that's not always a great translation, but for Brian Battle is one of these guys that looks like he has worked hard for every bit of talent that he has. True. And sometimes those guys are even more, they're even scarier than some of the guys who have the raw talent. These guys know what they worked for. They know how good they are. They know where their opportunities lie, which I think a lot of guys who have raw talent never admit to themselves. And I think guys like Brian Battle can be a real problem, especially because of how often they are underestimated. So give me Brian Battle here. I do think that AJ Fletcher is going to fade later in the fight. I do think it'll be a little bit later than the second round, so I'm going to go with the third round submission.
Okay. Great points. I'm not going to say it any better than you guys, so I agree. I think Brian Battle is going to be, overall, the more talented fighter in there, and I'll say that he's going to win in a decision. UD for Pooh Bear. All right. In the women's strawweight division, big fight here. Marina Rodriguez taking on Michelle, the karate hottie, Waterson-Gomez. Rodriguez, the 36-year-old out of Brazil, 16-3 as a pro. Looking to get back in the win column very badly after losing back-to-back fights to Lemos and Jandiroba. Michelle Waterson, the karate hottie, one of the more popular female fighters that the UFC has ever seen. 37 years old, out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. 18-11 as a pro, with 12 finishes, 9 of them submissions. Also, very, very badly looking to get back in the win column on a 3-fight losing streak and having lost 5 of her last 6. Omar, start us off. Give us your take and your pick of Rodriguez versus Waterson-Gomez.
Yeah, dude, it's been a rough go for Michelle Waterson-Gomez. She's won 6 fights in the octagon and she has lost 7 total. So she's, not even right now a 50-50 fighter technically. And it has been a rough go. She has won. She's been in a lot of split decisions in recent memory.
Yeah, I thought she won her last fight for what it's worth.
Yeah, the Luana Pinheiro one.
Pinheiro one, yeah.
Yeah. But she's had some rough goes too. Amanda Lemos put the beats on her. Marina Rodriguez, the first time I thought was a really competitive fight, but I do think that she lost that fight. So there's, I think there's still some life to Michelle Waterson-Gomez, but I do think there is a ceiling. I don't necessarily expect her to crack anything wild. And I think that's really the main reason why I'm going to be picking on Marina Rodriguez here. I just think that her aspirations in the division, her momentum in the division, kind of where we see her going forward, I think it's just a little bit further than where Michelle can reach. So I'm going to go with Marina Rodriguez here by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I agree. I think at this point in their careers, even though they're not that far apart in age at all, Waterson-Gomez, I think, has more miles on her body. And also stylistically, I think Rodriguez is going to be a bit busier. It's a tough one, though. I think this has the potential to be a great fight because Waterson-Gomez is very well-rounded as well. Comes in with a lot of skills. She's not afraid to take this fight to the ground if she wants to, but I'm going to say that Marina Rodriguez takes it in terms of striking prowess on the feet. I mean, her nickname is the Karate Hottie, so she's no slouch on the feet as well in Michelle Waterson-Gomez, but I'm going to go with Rodriguez, I'll say by UD. Mark?
So Marina's a pretty big favorite. She's minus 310. Michelle is plus 250. 3 inches of height and 3 inches of reach on Marina's side of things. And yeah, it wasn't that long ago that these two fought the first time, not even 2.5 years ago. I mean, Michelle has only fought 2 other girls in between that fight. So, little bit of a random booking to be happening again already, but I guess I'm here for it. And as Omar said, it was competitive the first time. Marina did win the decision pretty clearly, but it was a good fight. And I think this will be competitive again, but I think Marina can resist most of the grappling attempts from Michelle, and I think she will be able to edge her on the feet, similar to how you guys have said. Her Muay Thai is dangerous. She's the longer fighter. I think she lands the harder shots. And she needs it. You know, she's dropped 2 in a row. I'm a little nervous picking her because I picked her in both of those to beat Lemos and Janjadova. Obviously, they didn't go well. So I hope she is not falling off here. I mean, Michelle needs it just as bad as her. So, you know, hopefully we see a fun fight here. Hopefully they're both pushing for it. But I will agree, and I will say Marina by UD.
Okay, moving on to the co-main event of this UFC Fight Night. Very, very fun fight going down in the featherweight division. Bryce Thug Nasty Mitchell taking on Dan 50K Ige. Bryce Mitchell, the 28-year-old out of Sherwood, Arkansas, 15-1 as a pro with 9 submissions. Most recently, suffering his very first loss at the hands of the very talented Ilia Topuria back in December. Dan 50K Ige, 32 years old, out of Honolulu, Hawaii, 17-6 as a pro with 10 finishes. Back-to-back wins coming into this weekend over Damon Jackson and Nate Landwehr. Mark, start us off. Give us the odds to take and your pick in that order, please, and thank you.
Bryce Mitchell, the favorite. He is minus 210. Dan Ige is plus 170. 3 inches of height for Bryce, but 1 inch of reach for Ige. And I like this fight. Ige is a talented fighter. I thought he had one of his best performances to date in his last fight against Nate Landwehr. And his hands are crispy enough that they will be a factor in this fight in any exchange. But I'm on Bryce. I think he is being hugely slept on simply because he lost to Ilia Topuria, who's unreal. And I think he's going to take this fight. We've seen Ige get out-grappled before, and I think we are going to see just that again. Bryce is relentless. I think he finds the takedowns, keeps control, out-grapples Ige, maybe even en route to finding a submission. But I think I'm going to say it sees the cards, and I'll say Bryce wins this by UD. But I think we get a pretty big bounce-back type performance from Bryce Mitchell here.
Omar.
This is actually a really tough one for me, man. You know, both of these guys have very different approaches to how they fight. And both of them are very good at their respective approaches. Dan Ige is definitely a guy who wants to keep it on the feet. He wants to move around. He wants to use that lateral movement and footwork. He wants to put the volume on you. Again, he's not necessarily a pressure fighter in terms of walking you forward and forcing you to move back, but he's definitely not a guy that's going to allow you to kind of set in one angle and just be there. Dan Ige loves working his angles and loves moving around and cutting off the cage as much as he can. So I think we'll see a lot of that. The thing from Bryce Mitchell, though, are going to be the takedowns. That's going to be the story of the fight. Can Dan Ige stop the takedowns? Can he do it for 3 rounds? And then if he can, what can he do to Bryce Mitchell in between the moments where he's shooting for where Mitchell is shooting for a takedown and trying to put him on the ground? So as much as I do like Bryce Mitchell from a fight perspective, I think the kid's a little fucking Looney Tunes in real life, but that's for another day. Dan Ige, I think, has the ability to win that fight. I think his experience, I want to say his experience will hopefully guide him through that fight to win. And like I said, as long as I think he can keep it off the ground, I think he can win this fight. Even if he gets it down to the ground every, once or twice, I hope Bryce Mitchell can't hold him down for an entire round. It's very possible that he can. I think we've seen Dan Ige have gotten the better of him on the ground before from other fighters. But I think he'll be able to take care of it in this fight. So I'm going to go with Dan Ige here by unanimous decision.
Wow. This is such an interesting matchup. Pretty much every fight that Bryce Mitchell fights is an interesting matchup because at featherweight, I feel that, well, yes, he was sick in his fight with Topuria, but I think even if he was in tip-top health, it would have been pretty much the same result. I really do. Topuria exposed something in Bryce Mitchell. I think that Bryce Mitchell is not the most physical featherweight. For 145 pounds, he's not the biggest guy. He's not the most impressive physique. I'm very worried for Bryce Mitchell that he also might get out-physicaled by Dan Ige. But that grappling, man, Topuria had his own, I think, kind of counter-grappling and like just man strength and athleticism. What's so funny?
Man strength.
Yeah.
I liked it. No one's hating on you. Keep going.
So anyway, it's a close one. Tough to pick, but I'm going to go with Bryce Mitchell. I'll say he finds a submission late in the fight. I'll say 3rd round for Bryce.
I wanted you to go Ige there to give me another chance to make up some ground.
I'm a little surprised that he's that much of a favorite.
I am too, actually.
I thought it was going to be much
2-1. Yeah,
I mean,
2 to 1's a lot.
like I said, I think it's a close fight on paper.
Yeah. Definitely,
Right.
I would not have put either one of them in the 200s for me.
Yeah, fair.
Okay, main event time. Let's do this.
It's a fucking wild fight.
Dude, it is. In the lightweight division, a very consequential bout between Rafael Ataman Fiziev and Mateusz Gamrot. Fiziev is 30 years old and fighting out of Kazakhstan. He's 12-2 as a pro with 9 finishes, 8 of them knockouts. Looking to get back at the win column after suffering only his 2nd loss, a majority decision against Justin Gaethje. He'll be standing across from the very talented Polish fighter Mateusz Gamrot, 22-2 with 1 no contest, 7 knockouts, 5 submissions, coming off of a split decision victory over Jalen Turner back in March. So both of these men coming off of very close fights that could have gone either way. Mark, start us off. Give us the odds, the take, the pick.
Who do you guys think is favored?
Fiziev?
Honestly, man, I would think it would be Fiziev.
It is. He is minus 160. Gamrot is plus 130.
See, that's the line for Bryce Mitchell right there. That's what it should have been.
Yeah, that line for this fight is pretty much what I was imagining.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 inches of height for Gamrot, but 1 inch of reach for Fiziev. This is a great main event. Really interesting matchup between 2 talented fighters. Obviously different styles, which makes it fun. But personally, I just feel so much more comfortable with Fiziev here. His recent performances have just impressed me so much more than Gamrot's have. I still don't think Gamrot beat Sarukian. He got somewhat handled by Beneil Dariush. And then, yes, he did beat Jalen Turner, but it wasn't easy. He had to eat some shots in that fight to do it. Whereas on the flip side, Fiziev KO'd Moicano. He KO'd Riddell. He KO'd RDA and stuffed a bajillion takedowns in that fight. And then you could even argue he beat Justin Gaethje in a war. So to me, he has just been so much more impressive in his recent string of fights. And I know styles make fights, and that if Gamrot can get Fiziev to the ground, everything changes. But I trust Fiziev's takedown defense at this point, man. What he showed against RDA was really impressive. I'm not saying it'll never hit the mat, but he even if it does, he showed how hard it is to hold him down. So I don't know. As good and as tricky as Gamrot's wrestling is, I think the advantage that Fiziev has in the striking is just so much more of a factor than what Gamrot has in that department. And I think plenty of this fight will take place on the feet, and that Mateusz Gamrot is going to be eating some shots while it's there. And because this is 5 rounds, I'm actually going to go as far as saying that we see the first time Gamrot ever gets finished in his career. He's a bit reckless on the feet. We saw how much Turner landed on him. He's not the first guy to land on Gamrot like that. It's honestly a little surprising he's ever been finished. I mean, it's because he's very good. He's only got, what does he have, like 2 losses? But he's a little reckless, and he's a little bit there to be hit, and Fiziev's a friggin' sniper. So I'm going to say he finds it. I will take Rafael Fiziev by round 4 TKO.
Whew. Omar?
Believe it or not, we have the exact same pick. I am also going with Rafael Fiziev by 4th round knockout. I do think that the damage is going to accumulate over time. I trust Fiziev's hands and his legs more. You guys know I'm super biased when it comes to guys who are nasty at fucking Muay Thai, and Fiziev is probably going to be that guy for me for a little while. I love watching that man fight. I think his technique is on point. I think his flow is on point. And I think as long as Gamrot stands with him, which Gamrot will do, he'll definitely shoot for something at some point, but he's not necessarily afraid to strike. Even when maybe he should be, but he's not. And I think once he starts standing with Fiziev throws so much power on a consistent basis without getting tired that it's amazing to watch. And dude, honestly, man, that comes from the Muay Thai. That is a normal thing to happen in Muay Thai. Like, dudes find whatever their 50% power is, and they can throw their 50% power for a few rounds, right? Like, you rarely see people go crazy ham in Muay Thai unless they've really got somebody like fucked up somewhere. But for the most part, man, people are throwing with a good amount of force and a good amount of energy consistently throughout a fight. Where I feel like in MMA, especially with all the different techniques and all the different level changes that go on, you'll see guys fade. You'll see guys, throw a lot less power over time. Generally with guys who fight Muay Thai or have trained Muay Thai for a long time, especially guys who've been in there professionally, you'll rarely see the power diminish that much. But yeah, anyway, my point being that I just trust Fiziev over a long period of time, especially when it comes to the power. So I'm going to go again with Fiziev, 4th round KO.
Wow. Remind me the odds one more time, Mark.
-160 Fiziev, +130 Gamrot.
So pretty close.
Yes.
I love that. Yeah, I do think that this has the makings of being another lightweight classic between two talented guys. And pretty opposed stylistically. In this case, I think that Gamrot's going to keep rising in this case. I think that he's going to tough it out over Fiziev, and I think that he's going to weather the storm of Fiziev's sort of barrage of strikes, and he's going to find a way to get this into a grappling match, as he often does, and I think that his strengths are going to shine in this fight. So I'm going to take Mateusz Gamrot to hand Fiziev his 2nd consecutive decision loss. And there you have it. It would be huge. It would be huge. This is a big one either way.
Super random. Have either of you ever watched the show Vikings?
No. I've heard of it.
No, I know what it is though, but I've never seen it.
I have always, when I'm watching Fiziev, I have always had this weird feeling of like familiarity. And I'm always like, why do I feel like I know this guy more than I know this guy? And I realized today that he looks exactly like the main character of the show Vikings. And now
I know exactly who you're talking about because I've seen the poster so many times and like commercials and shit. So I know the one dude that you're actually talking about on that fucking show.
Yeah. They have like the same beard, same hair, everything. And
does the dude in the Vikings though? Does he have a little ponytail coming out of the little?
At times, he had a lot of different looks in that show. Like he changed his shit all the time. But yes,
I see it. I see it.
Anyway.
Oh my God, I see it.
Oh, you pulled it up?
Funny.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. How funny. Holy shit. It's uncanny. Wow.
Even like the
All right,
eyes,
boys.
the whole deal.
Yeah. All right, folks. Enjoyed the Bellator and UFC action. It is late. It is almost 12:40 a.m. time for us. So Daddy's tired. Daddy's going to bed.
There's been a lot of daddies dropped on this episode from you.
Yeah, this is a lot of porn shit going on here.
And you're showing us what you'd look like with slick back hair right now, too. You're getting aggressive.
Yeah.
I got the porn, the high pony porn.
Oh, man. All right, boys.
Yes.
Good episode. No trivia tonight, right? It's late.
No, it's too late. It's too late.
No.
Sorry, people.
We had a little secret trivia. If you listen to the whole episode,
That's
you got the
right.
trivia.
We slipped it in earlier.
There
That's
you
right.
go.
I was
That's
saying
what she
slipped
said,
it in
baby.
right after the
That's what she said, baby. Let's go.
Get out of here. Oh, man. All right, folks.
Peace.
Peace.